And by the way, let's also keep in mind, we're talking about the U.S., not the rest of the world. $70 billion is spent right now. Call it $7.5 billion is being spent on streaming services, programming content. If you assume that $70 billion holds flat by the year 2024, using the programming plans that are already in place, there'll be about $30 billion being spent on streaming services, programming content, not the $7.5 that's being spent today. Viewing shares are roughly proportional to spending on content. Shocker, right? So you can reasonably assume maybe 30% of programming is being viewed through streaming services, but on the traditional TV set. How different will it really be, right? It won't feel that different. You're just using a different programming guide. You're accessing content differently.
How many streaming services can each person reasonably have?
I think there's no reason people can't have 5, 6, 7, or 8.
Are you kidding me?
Will they?
Not at the Keene household.
No, I mean,
Brahmapad, not either.
Your spending will not necessarily go up by much more than 1 or 2%. You're going to reduce what you're spending on your traditional video service. And the way in which you'll access the content is just pretty simple. It's like go through your Roku or whatever your interface is. You're going to select, I want to add this. And at the same time, the traditional cable offering will be less useful. You may just cut that. We call it cutting the cord, but you're going to keep paying for your data service. So the total amount you're spending for content isn't going to look that different.
Let's come back. Brian Weiser with us with Pivotal Research. No, he's now with Group M, and a brilliant essay here on advertising, including the media landscape of sports. We'll touch on that here in a moment. I got red on the screen, but don't oversell it on a Friday. Negative 14 on the Dow. I can't believe I'm saying this number. My eyes are failing me. 27,663 on the Dow. SPX 3,082.
Maybe people are writing the gloom notes, and they're feeling it.
I don't disagree with that. They're writing them up right now. They'll be launched at 2 p.m. today. World's coming to an end. Go to cash.
Solar flares are going to take out the entire grid.
It's just a Friday churn here. Maybe looking for some more economic data and maybe some international uncertainty. One thing, Lisa, we didn't mention here, Mr. Macron of France was just scathing, like on the edge of Charles de Gaulle this morning about NATO. It's a 7 hours ago story and maybe off the American radar, but Mr. Macron just really ramped it up.
The fragility of some traditional alliances has been a theme for the past couple of years, and it has faded into the backdrop as a din. And the question is, will it ever rise beyond that and affect markets in a real way?
He advanced the European discussion. Some of that will redound on the next week as well. I've got some dollar strength here with yen 109.35. Sterling gives way 128.10 on British pound sterling. Worldwide, this is Bloomberg.
Let's get a check on what else is happening in the world. We've got our own Michael Barr. Michael.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you, Tom. Before the impeachment inquiry goes public next week, investigators hope to hear from one more witness today, but that witness will likely be a no-show. Acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney was asked to testify today as part of the impeachment inquiry. Yesterday, Democrats released more transcripts from the inquiry. Senior State Department official George Kent testified President Trump wanted nothing less than Ukraine President Zelensky to go to the microphone and say investigations are tied to Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is in Berlin today, celebrating the fall of the Berlin Wall 30 years ago, and with it the eventual end of the Cold War. Pompeo was asked if there was a new Cold War now, it would be with China over communication superiority.
So as you think about networks, as you think about who's going to control the rules of communications connectivity in the next decades, you should think about whether you would have permitted the Soviet Union to control your infrastructure, your network communications infrastructure.
The latest addition to the National Toy Hall of Fame includes a tiny car, Matchbox. Revolutionized the toy car industry after they were introduced in 1953. The game Magic and the coloring book round out the class of 2019. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts, more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg Tom.
Michael Barr, thanks so much. You're going to come back. Brian Weiser with us. We'll talk sports, how we're glued to the tube on the weekend. This is Bloomberg.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
rights to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right. Use it. To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's environment of market volatility, Pershing's Prime Services is well positioned to support the needs of hedge funds and other alternative investment managers. Whether it's customized financing or securities lending solutions, platform access, or business expansion, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and agile enough to meet your evolving demands. Pershing helps to solve the needs of clients by advocating for them, providing unwavering strength, deep supply, and award-winning service that is at the core of everything we do. Find out what sets Pershing's prime brokerage team apart.
Learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers offered by BNY Mellon's Pershing. Visit our website at Pershing.com. Pershing LLC, member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
It's another Friday afternoon, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick to enjoy a warm Bayesian welcome.
How are you doing? Enjoying the sunshine?
Fly from London Gatwick to Barbados with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £699 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Do you really expect my mother to sit on that?
Bathroom in need of a festive fix-up? Get to B&Q. We've all you need to get ready for the in-law invasion. From simple solutions like shelving and storage to essentials like the Diane soft close toilet seat for just £25. Bring the magic home with B&Q.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Get your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
NFL fans, the action continues this weekend on TuneIn Premium.
Hand off the Gord, pushes forward, touchdown!
This Sunday, TuneIn has every NFL football game starting with the New York Giants at the New York Jets at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern and closing out Sunday night with the Vikings at the Dallas Cowboys at 8:20 p.m. Eastern.
Breaks inside the 25-20, inside the 15, the 10, the 5, touchdown!
At home or on the go, hear the home and away call of every NFL game this season on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Good. Here's a swing and a drive deep to right field. Looking up. Goodbye, baseball.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off homers, follow TuneIn on social media to discover the latest and greatest in live sports.
With the 24th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft.
From live reminders that the biggest MLB games are on the air to recommendations of the best new sports talk shows and podcasts.
He's going to be fine. He's going to be good right away in 3 years.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Hours a day, on air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
A White House official says don't expect to see President Trump's top aide appear on Capitol Hill today in the House impeachment inquiry. In addition to Mick Mulvaney, one of the administration's national security experts, is also not expected to arrive. Former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg is said to be seriously considering entering the race for president. Linda Kenyon tells us it could send a message to one of the Democratic frontrunners.
Bloomberg earlier considered a 2020 run, but he passed in part because of Joe Biden's expected strength in the field. The fact that he appears to be reconsidering could be signaling his dissatisfaction with the current field of Democratic candidates hoping to take on President Trump.
What's left of the community of Paradise, California takes a pause today to mark 1 year since a terrifying fire wiped out some 19,000 homes and businesses and killed 86 people. One of the remembrances will be nearly a minute and a half of silence to recall every life that was lost. I'm Jan Johnson.
They like new developments.
This is an industry that is in demand.
They love telling you about all of them.
What will society ultimately decide?
Carol Messer and Jason Kelly. Bloomberg Business Week, weekday afternoons at 2 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. This update's brought to you by Eisner-Amper. Taxes are one of the certainties of life, but what worked for corporate taxpayers in the past may not work today. Eisner-Amper can help. Visit EisnerAmper.com/tax certainty. The risk-on mood that's permeated global financial markets this week shows signs of easing as U.S. equities falter and most European stocks slip. Investors are trying to gauge the progress of trade negotiations between Washington and Beijing. Treasuries are extending their recent declines. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P 500 had little change. It's at 3085. The Dow Jones Industrial Average also little changed, up 8 points at 27,684. And the NASDAQ little changed, up 5 to 8440. 10-year Treasury down 330 seconds. Yield 1.92%. Yield on the 2-year 1.66%. NYMEX crude oil down 1.7% or 96 cents at 56.19 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.4% or $6.10 at 14.60.30 an ounce. The euro 1.1026 against the dollar. The yen 109.35. Walt Disney is up 4.8% after reporting solid earnings. Gap is down 7% as the company's turnaround sputtered and it fired its chief executive. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thanks so much. Greatly appreciated. Mixed market, green and red on the screen. We'll leave it at that. Bloomberg Surveillance this morning brought to you by Invesco. Every day they bring together ideas with technology, data with inspiration, and investors with solutions. Invesco, greater possibilities together. Invesco.com/together. Invesco Distributors, Inc. We're going to do a sports thing right now. Brian Weiser with his Group M talking about that linkage of advertising into all. Brian, when I'm in a sports thing and they stay on whatever the screen is after the whistle or whatever, and then they go to the ad right next to it, is that good or bad for the ad industry?
It's probably good. You're paying attention.
Yes.
I think that there's a fine line between getting someone with a brand message at a point where they really don't want to be exposed to an ad with an ad that
sort of there
producing value. Yeah, well, I don't know. Yeah. Go both ways. Would you rather have a really good ad in a bad program or a bad ad in a good program?
I think, the Forrester research, Lisa, this is a really important question Mr. Weiser asked. And based on what I've read here is younger people particularly would rather have no ads. I mean, it's just that simple.
Unless the ad's going to go viral and be pretty awesome, in which case it's gold. But I do have to wonder what happens to cable if sports move to the streaming world.
Well, I mean, the first thing is, so sports accounts for about 10% of all TV viewing. And it is disproportionately valuable, like the relative amount of spending that goes into it is greater than 10%. So if it went to the streaming world and it was not ad-supported, mostly the advertising budgets would just get reallocated inside of the remainder, for the most part.
Yeah.
That said, I think most our advertisers should look at alternatives, right? I can say, here's what most advertisers will do, and then there's what they should do. What they should do is look about broader market communication strategies, look at finding different ways to interact with consumers that go well beyond just media, right? But the reality is that most advertisers would just reallocate their money to other ideas within television.
Brian Weiser, thank you so much. With Group M, just fabulous research. Greatly appreciate having Brian Weiser on with something that clearly affects our life as well. What we know is certain, deep in the confines of Bloomberg News, they understand that there's exactly two things at work. One is any article on English football, and the other is what I'm going to call rotisserie articles on American football. Richard Truman joins us right now. Richard, every week generates, am I right, Rich? It's rotisserie league, but it's not the big fancy names, right?
It's the wildly popular fantasy football for the professionals, the NFL.
Yeah.
And what happens is each week I pick about 10 guys that I consider.
But they're not
value
Tom
picks.
Brady.
No, they're not the primo Saquon Barkley's and Christian McCaffrey's. I try to go through for value picks, and I try to use them in Wall Street terms, my bulls, my bears, my low volatility at the end, and we recap it.
Is the entire Jets-Giants, what are they, 3-1,000 over the last X number of years? Are they all value picks?
Well, as a matter of fact, the Giants are playing the Jets this week, and the Giants are 2-7. The Jets are 1-7, and unless they tie, somebody's got to win.
Really? Excuse me, right there, Lisa. Excuse
genius.
me. That is a surveillance exclusive. Okay.
Unless they tie, someone's got to win.
Truman.
Carry on.
Right, so I think there is value in this game. The Giants have given up 3 touchdown passes each of the last 2 weeks to Dallas and Detroit.
Yeah.
So even though the Jets are in disarray, I actually do like their quarterback Sam Darnold this week.
Over the other guy, the new guy.
Well, Daniel Jones, I think, will have success also. I think the Giants are going to keep the ball on the ground a lot with Saquon Barkley.
But the QB for the Jets is going to do better.
Yeah, and they also have a tight end on the team who was out most of the year because of suspension and injury. His name is Chris Herndon. That's another long shot wild pick that I actually like.
I got to go to the fighting Texas Aggie. Christian Kirk, the St. Louis Cardinals.
Arizona Cardinals.
Excuse me, St. Louis Cardinals. Whatever. It's always the uniform's still the same. It's the St. Louis Cardinals. Christian Kirk, he's like 5'11". They say he weighs 200 pounds. Come on, he's 160 with all his equipment on. How good is he?
Well, their quarterback is Kyler Murray. He's short in stature, who was the number 1 pick in the NFL. They're playing Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay and Arizona have 2 of the worst pass secondaries in the league. They've given up
the defense.
Got it. So I kind of look for teams that might be involved in high-scoring games. So I like a guy in each one of these teams. I'll take the wide receiver Christian Kirk, who you mentioned. He plays for Arizona. Tampa's defense is the second worst against the league against the pass. And I like Chris Godwin of Tampa Bay. He's cooled off recently because his fellow wide receiver Mike Evans has been on fire. I like Chris Godwin of Tampa this week.
Lisa, can I ask a dumb question, or do you want to jump in here?
Are you kidding? Go ahead.
Are there any defensive players in fantasy league football?
Yeah, there are certain leagues that have defensive players only.
Really?
That's a dumb question.
In the league that I play in, you pick a defensive team. So if they score a touchdown on special teams or defense, you get points. Or if they give
Harvard keeping Dartmouth down to 9 points is like a fantasy pick.
Yes, it would be that, yes.
Okay,
Lisa,
Rich,
please.
What's the track record of actually picking value players that actually are value?
Lisa, that's a wonderful question.
Well, thank you.
Each week we have an independent auditor. My daughter, who just passed her CPA.
Totally independent. Totally
Brandon Koch-Coden of the Bloomberg News Desk calculates my picks. We're at 60% success on we considered a bullish pick. So 60% success rate so far this year.
So who wants to be in a fantasy league with you? Don't they just get crushed?
Well, these aren't my picks that I would pick on my team. These are just different picks each week. So most of these players
but what's
are not
your track
on my
record
team.
on your team?
In one league, I'm doing very well. In my work league with my fellow friends here, had a couple of injuries, not doing so well.
Let's translate this out. Rich bought a manse up in Watch Hill off his fantasy pick. Okay, Marlon Mack, he gets to play the Dolphins. Aren't the Dolphins worst in the world?
They were until they played the Giants the Jets last week.
Yeah, Mr. Matt. Well, yeah, but the Jets are the worst in the world. Good morning, Mohammed.
So I like
Marlon Mack.
Yeah. So here's the deal: they're playing the Dolphins. Chances of the Dolphins going on the road and winning 2 in a row are very nil. I think the Colts are going to have a big lead. They're going to ground and pound, and Mac's going to get a lot of catches.
Taylor Gabriel, Bears.
This is a very, very long shot because his quarterback, Mitch Trubisky, has been terrible the entire season. I think he only has 5 touchdown passes. However, they're playing the Detroit Lions, who are one of the worst against the pass in the league. This is a kind of a hunch long shot play, so I'm trying him.
Within this excellence, and Rich, full disclosure, Rich has killed it some weeks. He's had a couple bad weeks, but for the most part, it's like stunning what you've done. Great. How do you make money at this? I mean, it's like 30 people in a rotisserie league, and you all put in a ton of money, and you make money per week, or you make it at the end of the season?
There are 2 options. You can join a league with friends, and you pay one fee, whatever. You pay one fee at the beginning, and then whoever wins, wins. Or there are these daily fantasy leagues.
Yeah, the daily ones.
And, there are some pools that you put $9 in, and you could try to win up to like $200,000, $300,000.
So where are you on sports betting? I mean, we talked to Bloomberg Intelligence, and they're brilliant on this, and it's at the talk of the nation. Frankly, football fantasy league's got to be just huge 5 years from now.
Well, football gambling in general is gigantic.
Already
New Jersey, I believe New Jersey used to pass Las Vegas in gambling, just because they make a lot of money on online betting. New York could be soon to follow, but it's immense popularity.
Your pick of the week, it's not Johnny Unitas, right? Who is it?
My pick of the week, I'm going for the long shots. I'm going to go with Sam Darnold, the Jets.
The Jets? The Jets are going to beat the Giants?
I don't really care if they're going to beat the Giants. I mean, I'm just going for guys I think are going to have success in fantasy. I actually think the Giants are going to beat the Jets, but I think Sam Darnold might have a good game.
Very cool.
Who's your team?
I'm a Giant fan.
So you don't care?
I don't care.
Have you ever had a Patriots in your fantasy league?
One of my leagues, I have Sony Michel, who's a running back for the
You've never had Tom Brady in your
I've had him, but I've done this for a couple of decades, so he's been on the team. He's played for a couple of decades. I've had him once or twice.
See that hatred in his voice?
I've had him.
Can you hear it?
I've had him.
Hear the hatred?
He wasn't much.
Hatred for the Patriots. Rich Truman, thank you so much. We say good morning, Boston, 106.1 FM. Next week, I promise he'll have a Patriot within his fantasy league picks. Rich Truman doing better than good on fantasy football. See that at Bloomberg News. The mixed data screen, it's not Fed Day. It's just like a Friday churn. Maybe waiting for some news that's not out there. At least 1.95%. Yields come in a little bit.
Yeah, there is 1.926% coming down, but still higher on the day, reaching up toward that 2% threshold.
And we may have some presidential headlines to President Trump just starting with the press. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
This is a Bloomberg Market.
It's another Friday afternoon, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick to see spectacular coral reefs and white sand beaches. Fly from London Gatwick to Mauritius with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £949 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
In the dictionary, a podcast is this: a digital audio file made available on the internet, typically as a series, of which new installments can be received by subscribers automatically. But on TuneIn, a podcast is this.
I'm Adam Grant, and this is Work Life, my podcast with Ted. I study how to make work not suck.
And it's defined like this.
Blackout is a suspense-filled thriller from Endeavor Audio and Q-Code.
From news, sports, to pop culture, comedy, and beyond. Define your own podcast possibilities on TuneIn.
Today at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Where's your views on the municipal bond landscape?
The market does not like uncertainty, does not react well to uncertainty.
There's a whole lot of optimism around the valuation of Uber.
What is Ford saying about the self-driving car?
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
Maybe we're getting hooked on debt and low interest rates.
The black hole called power could be a bigger black hole.
A toxic brew of slower revenue growth.
There is now this belief that Amazon
Amazon maybe can do anything.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Coming up, one headline, that's all it takes to turn all major indexes lower. President Trump saying the U.S. has not agreed to roll back tariffs with China just yet. We now have all three indexes down a bit, not dramatically, but nonetheless, we'll be discussing more on that. Plus, we'll take a look at Disney shares surging on a number of news items with respect to streaming. Right now, though, let's head over to Karen Moscow for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Karen.
Yeah, Lisa, as you said, stocks taking a leg lower following those comments from President Trump. The S&P 500 down 0.3% or 9 points at 3075. Dow Jones Industrial Average down 0.3% or 82 points at 27,588. Nasdaq's down 0.25% or 19 points to 8415. 10-year Treasury up 6/32, yield 1.89%. Yield on the 2-year 1.63%. NYMEX crude oil is down 2.4% on $1.36 at 55.80 a barrel, and COMEX gold is up 0.2% or $2.10 at 14.6880 an ounce. The euro 1.1028 against the dollar. The yen 109.11. We did get some economic data to bring to you. U.S. consumer sentiment improving for a third straight month in November as Americans grew more upbeat about their financial situation and the economic outlook. The University of Michigan's preliminary sentiment index edged up to 95.7 from 95.5 in October. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul and Lisa.
Thank you so much, Karen. Paul Sweeney is my co-host and colleague. He is off today, of course, the day that we're going to be talking about Disney all morning long, which he covered for years. So, Paul, if you're listening, you'll just have to provide insights at another time when we're not talking about it. Bloomberg Markets brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, offering hands-on learning in the largest makerspace in New Jersey for those working in manufacturing and mechatronics. More at njit.edu/manufacturing. We are seeing all three indexes lower, not by much. NASDAQ down 0.2%, S&P similar, and Dow right behind it. President Trump saying that the U.S. has not agreed to a tariff rollback with China. Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks editor, joining us here in our Interactive Brokers studios. Not a dramatic move, but still whipsawing the sentiment yet again.
Absolutely. I mean, you're not talking about a whole lot in terms of the S&P 500, maybe 10 points at most. And even that has kind of dissipated in the last couple minutes. So, yeah, it's clear there's still a focus on the trade situation and hopes that at least something will be worked out. For the moment, though, it's a matter of kind of riding the headlines day in and day out as the S&P 500 tries to work its way higher and then occasionally runs up against a bump like we're seeing today.
So let's talk about some specific names. Let's start with Disney because that really is the main driver here. Surging. Why?
Yeah, it is, although it is kind of off where it was before the opening bell. It had been up something like 6%. Now it's a little bit more than 4%. That said, it is the biggest gain in the S&P 500 at the moment, and people liked the third quarter earnings at the very least. And then looking ahead, it's all about Disney Plus, which rolls out next week, their streaming service. And, you know, they've got agreements in place with a couple of companies to carry the service. And now they've got more. They've got Amazon. We can start there. Also, it's going to be on Samsung and LG devices. So it's about getting this new service out in front of potential customers and hoping that introductory price, you know, $6.99 a month, you know, about half what the most popular Netflix plan costs, will allow them to make inroads. I mean, they certainly have a lot invested. You know, the number that jumped out at me from our reporting is $1 billion they're going to be spending on movies and TV shows next year. A lot of that with the new service in mind. So, you know, if anybody's going to compete with Netflix the way that they built up that whole streaming video business, Disney certainly is a company that's capable of doing that.
Yeah, content is king yet again. Netflix shares, we should say, down 0.3%. Amazon shares down 0.6%. I'm wondering, just generally, we are coming to the end of earnings season. Can you give us a sense of just the overall theme, the standout message from what we got out of the third quarter?
Well, companies couldn't make back the loss, in essence. Analysts expecting earnings to be down as they did in the first and second quarters. Now, in those cases, companies beat analyst projections, at least the ones we surveyed here at Bloomberg, by enough of a margin to be able to deliver profit growth. It doesn't look like that's going to happen this time. The latest numbers out of Bloomberg Intelligence putting S&P 500 earnings down 1.5% for the third quarter. I mean, it's certainly less than the 3.6% decline that analysts were expecting as we went into the reporting period. Nonetheless, it shows you that there is a certain amount of weakness that companies have to get past here.
So when people talk about the general feeling moving toward a more positive, more constructive feel, we see optimism trying to bleed into the major indexes. Do you find justification for that from the earnings we just saw and the forecasts from the companies?
Well, you have seen some of the fourth quarter numbers come down from where they were if you're looking at analyst predictions. You know, that said, and we should have some updated numbers or later today in terms of what analysts are anticipating for the fourth quarter and beyond. I mean, you get to end of next year, we're supposed to be back to 10% plus earnings growth. And just in terms of the sequence, every quarter going into the end of next year is supposed to be better than the previous one in terms of earnings. So you return to profit growth kind of this quarter, and then you have a pickup in the first and the second and the third and the fourth quarter. So with that kind of sequence going on, and you have perhaps some more confidence on the part of investors about how the economy is going to do going forward, you can understand at least what the thinking is behind what we're seeing in stocks. Now, whether that indeed pans out is an open question. Nonetheless, at least there's something to suggest that, you know, there is an anticipation that things are going to get better from here.
Yeah, I should say, though, after those headlines that President Trump saying that there has been no decision to roll back the tariffs on China just yet, we should note that equities are going further into the red, 0.3% down across the board now. And interestingly, the move in 10-year Treasury yields also notable now, lower on the day, 1.9%. So, you know, you are seeing this sort of knee-jerk response, and Treasury is still havens, despite the fact that there had been such a sell-off yesterday.
0.3% off a record set yesterday for the S&P 500.
Okay.
Well, we have to put things in context here. I mean, things have kind of settled out to some extent, but you're still talking about record highs for stocks, and it's not just the S&P 500 that's showing that. So, you know, whatever we get down the line, at the very least, people are anticipating that it's going to be more positive than we've seen lately.
So what else is catching your eye? What are you watching today?
Well, I mean, there's always a few things to watch. Home flipping business is going great for Zillow.
Oh, there you go.
You know, their earnings came out.
Did you see the story about how the average age or the median age of people who buy homes in the U.S. has now gone to 48 years old? That is the oldest ever on record. Also, that first-time home buyers, the average age or the median age is 33, which is also the oldest ever. And people are looking at student loans and sort of the hangover there as one reason why people can't really go and buy a house anymore.
Well, look, I mean, people are doing things later in life than they used to. Think about getting married. I mean, how often does it happen in the 30s as opposed to the 20s? So things are happening later in life now. And I'm reminded that we had a column out at the beginning of this week from Gary Schilling, the economist, talking about how millennials should accept their fate when it comes to housing because actually owning homes hasn't been that great of an investment.
I did read that. I thought it was a really interesting article. Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks editor, thank you so much for joining us here in our interactive broker studios. Right now, let's head down to our 99 studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager there with world's and national headlines. Nathan.
Now, we'll flesh out the news that just broke moments ago from President Trump, Lisa. He says the U.S. has not agreed to a rollback of tariffs on China as trade negotiations drag on. Speaking to reporters ahead of a trip to Georgia today, President Trump says China wants a partial reversal of duties, but he won't fully roll them back. The president also says while China wants a partial reversal, that he would sign any deal with President Xi Jinping in the U.S., and could do it in Iowa. The president also says he is not concerned about anything on impeachment, saying the testimony has all been fine. The House impeachment committees have released transcripts just about every day this week of closed-door depositions describing efforts to pressure Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden and the 2016 campaign. Today, the committee subpoenaed acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney to give a closed-door deposition. He did not show. Tomorrow marks 30 years since the fall of the Berlin Wall. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is there.
Speaking mere feet from where the wall once stood to celebrate its demise now 3 decades ago. Sometimes we need to take a victory lap.
Pompeo says NATO risks becoming irrelevant if its 29 member states don't do more to contribute to their common defense. Turkey says it will start sending captured Islamic State members back to their countries of origin next week. Turkey's interior minister says the extraditions will begin Monday. Previously, he had said Turkey is not a hotel for foreign Islamic State members. Turkey has accused Kurdish forces it's fighting in northeastern Syria of releasing Islamic State families from refugee camps last month. Global news 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Full breakfast, cup of coffee, whatever you have in the morning, have it at daybreak.
What's the outlook for the pound if there is another election?
Nathan Hager.
The U.S. could still delay those tariffs?
And Karen Moscow.
It is the 5th major industry player to make some sort of zero commission offer.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
Bloomberg has more from Hong Kong.
Weekdays at 5 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
I'm a 40-year-old man that walked in there to get his high school diploma. It was very hard for me, but Miss Araceli, she gave me direction.
At age 47, Marco finished his high school diploma.
50% of getting your high school diploma is walking through those doors. The other 50% is doing the work.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
You're fierce. You take care of business and don't hold back. Taking care of your health shouldn't be any different. You know when something's off. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, and rashes. Listen to your body. It could be lupus. We're here to help you take control. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
The markets.
It's another Friday afternoon, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and explore tropical rainforests. Fly from London Gatwick to Costa Rica with British Airways from £218 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Now is the time for a little kindness. It's easy to feel overwhelmed these days, and everyone deserves a time out. Head to austria.info/kindness to tell us about someone who should win a holiday to Austria's beautiful ski slopes. With a pinch of luck, they'll be enjoying the snow, sun, and serenity of a winter paradise in no time. Visit austria.info/kindness now.
At Argos, get them the toys they're dreaming of this Christmas. Save 20% when you spend £20 or more on toys with code TOYS20, including top brands like Peppa Pig and Lego. Enjoy same-day home delivery 7 days a week. With Argos, you're good to go. Offer ends the 12th of November, subject to availability. Exclusions apply. Delivery conditions apply. Order by 6 p.m. 90% UK coverage.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Gosh, can we put the heating on?
Sorry, it's broken.
Can I play some tunes on my phone then?
Yeah, afraid not. Play CDs though.
This car belongs in a scrapyard.
I know, but I get nothing if I scrapped it.
Actually, you can get at least £2,000 off a new Ford for it.
Really?
With Ford's new for old scrappage scheme, you can get between £2,000 and £4,250 off a new Ford car if you scrap an eligible vehicle with us responsibly. Also, there's 0% APR representative on Ford options. Ford. Together, we go further. Search Ford Scrappage. Exclusions apply. Contracted and registered by 31st of December 2019 at participating dealers. Age and ownership criteria apply to scrappage vehicle. Subject to status. Free post Ford credit.
Waiting for a phone that makes everything look crystal clear? Like a brilliant iPhone 8 with Retina display? The wait is over. Tesco Mobile's best ever Black Friday event is on. This week, get an iPhone 8 for just £23.49 a month. A saving of £144. Get yours by 17th of November. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Best ever Black Friday based on range of products in promotion was £27.49, now £23.49. 36-month credit agreement, rolling monthly usage agreement, subject to status, phase policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Stuck in traffic during the big game? With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to your favorite NFL team on the go. No TV required. Even during rush hour, you won't miss a single touchdown. Listen to the NFL on TuneIn Premium today.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen now to ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash. Stocks edge into the red after President Donald Trump goes on and says the U.S. has not agreed to a tariff rollback with China, and that has quieted any hopes for a preliminary trade deal next month. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's down 0.1% down 5. The Dow's down 0.2% down 51. NASDAQ is down just less than 0.1% down 6. The 10-year is up 1/32. The yield is 1.91%. West Texas Intermediate crude's down over 2% at $55.97 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.1% at $14.6480 an ounce. The dollar yen, 109.20. The euro's $1.1025. The British pound, $1.2815. No longer the khaki king of the 90s, Gap has been in need of an overhaul. Art Peck won't be the one to deliver it after all. Gap fired its CEO late yesterday after his turnaround efforts failed to reignite sales growth. Gap is currently down 6.6%. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
I'm Lisa Abramowitz, Paul Sweeney, my co-host and colleague, off today. Right now, we are looking at a bounce back after those headlines, and it raises a question as we get the tariffs on, tariffs off, trade deal on, trade deal off, back and forth of the past few months, perhaps even more than a year. What is the narrative people should be paying attention to? Let's bring in Stephen Gallo, head of European FX strategy for BMO Capital Markets. Stephen, I want to start there. Just aside from the push-pull that we get out of trade headlines, what's the larger economic story that's framing your view of how to make a trade here?
Great segue. I think that's a great question, and I think I'll answer it very simply. As long as the trade tensions don't fully reverse, so in other words, as long as we don't go back to the world the way it was pre-trade war, Sustained renminbi and euro appreciation versus the dollar is going to require bigger than anticipated non-monetary stimulus in the Eurozone and China, and also all sorts of growth unleashing economic reforms. In particular, I think the key to the euro picture is and always has been the fiscal policy outlook. So there's talk more now about banking union, and it looks like there are some plans crystallizing for banking union. But even in the process for moving towards a banking union, reducing sovereign risk and also greater risk sharing, a lot of that I think is dependent on the fiscal approach, at least in our view. And so provided that you don't have these shifts, it's going to be difficult for the dollar to sustain significant depreciation, which is why I think if you look at the U.S. yield curve right now, look at where 3-month dollar LIBOR is trading versus the U.S. 10-year yield. The U.S. 10-year yield is now trading back above 3-month dollar LIBOR. We've seen a re-steepening of the U.S. curve, and U.S. yields have gone up more than yields in Japan and the Eurozone. And that has provided a little bit of actually extra lift for the dollar versus the euro and versus other major currencies. So it's a growth story. It really, at the end of the day, is a growth story.
So basically, unless you believe that Germany is going to move away from its balanced budgets plans and move towards some sort of fiscal stimulus, the dollar will reign king here and will continue to gain.
Yes, I think fiscal stimulus is a big part of the issue in the Eurozone and in Germany. And I'm not saying that, it's out of the question, but we won't see any of it. And of course, we have to just rewind for a second and go back to the trade war. I mean, we are seeing incremental progress here, and that will undoubtedly help things rather than harm things. But one, are we really going to see a full rectification of the trade war and a comprehensive deal so we can go back to normal again? Not sure so far. Still very cautious on that front. And two, in the Eurozone picture, the fiscal stimulus is one aspect of it, but there's also the structural problems that the Eurozone faces. The path towards greater fiscal stimulus is really all about the path towards greater integration and completion of the Eurozone, like the missing parts of the Eurozone. So the two go together, in my view. And so it's a very difficult road ahead, I think.
I want to shift gears to China. A lot of people blame this slowdown on trade tensions, but there has been a general slowing of the economy. How much ammunition do you think the PBOC has left to stimulate the economy in a meaningful way?
Yeah, another great question. Great question. I think they certainly have ammunition. If you asked me to put, where would I put my money in terms of a sort of a relative success story versus Europe and China, I would always pick China. They have the control. They have the levers to pull. They can survive the trade war. But do they want to use all of that ammunition given the existing financial stability risks, debt burdens, leverage, et cetera, in the system? I think the answer is no for the time being. And that's effectively what they've been doing. You've had a lot of investors out there that have been really looking for this story, this aggressive China stimulating story, so they can go out and get long of the RMB and buy all sorts of EM assets. But we really haven't seen it. And I think the reason for that is because China is very acutely aware, the policymakers are acutely aware of the lingering risks. And so they know that aggressive stimulus won't have a lot of traction, and it will create a bigger mess for them to clean up further down the road. But again, having said that, they can ride the storm out of the trade war. They're in a much, I think, stronger position than, for example, say Europe is.
Can emerging market currencies continue to gain if China doesn't necessarily get a lift here?
Some of them can and some of them can't. I think you have to pick your emerging market currencies very carefully. The one resounding picture that we do have for the EM world, though, is that what central banks have effectively been doing throughout the trade war is cutting interest rates. And they've had the low inflation backdrop to be able to do that, and relatively benign situation on the balance of payments. But here's the issue. If global tensions don't fully subside and we don't get a big rebound in global growth, what yield are emerging market currencies really offering you in that type of an environment, given the buildup in foreign exchange debt in emerging on the part of emerging market corporates and also some sovereigns. Given the structural impediments to growth, they're offering you less and less yield as time goes on. So you have to consider this very carefully given the global backdrop. I would say you pick your moments to be involved in EM, but you pick those moments very carefully and very cautiously.
Stephen Gallo, thank you so much for joining me today. Stephen Gallo, head of European FX strategy for BMO Capital Markets, and right on cue, the dollar gaining against its major peers, the emerging markets FX index from MSCI declining as we get back to the trade, which has been stronger dollar, weaker everything else, although emerging market currencies had been on a tear. This is Bloomberg Markets.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Trade continues to dominate for investors. Stocks have turned lower after trading little changed. President Trump said the U.S. hasn't agreed to tariff rollbacks with China. President Trump told reporters that China wants a partial rollback. There's a new CEO at The Gap. The apparel company has fired Art Peck. His turnaround efforts failed to reignite sales growth. The company includes the namesake Gap brand, plus Banana Republic and Old Navy. Non-executive chairman Robert Fisher will serve as interim CEO. Honda has cut its annual profit forecast. Sluggish global demand and supply issues are weighing on the automaker. And Americans are getting older and older before they buy a home. The median age of first-time home buyers has increased to 33 years old. That's according to the National Association of Realtors. That's the oldest in records dating back to 1981. Higher property taxes and mountains of student debt are keeping some potential buyers out of the market. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
Hi, I'm your host, Smokey Colbert, filling in for Smokey because after 75 years of...
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Turns out there's much more to say. Nearly 90% of wildfires are caused by us humans being careless, dumping our used barbecue coals willy-nilly. Guess the song was wrong. We did start the fire. That's why I respect Mother Nature and her trees, whether coniferous or new car scented. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Join us in New York City on November 21st as Bloomberg Pursuits convenes the second annual The Year Ahead Luxury. Speakers include Jennifer Hyman, CEO Rent the Runway, Alessandro Bogliolo, CEO Tiffany & Company, Robert A.M. Stern, renowned architect. Supporting sponsor, Diamond Producers Association. Participating sponsor, St. Regis Hotels and Resorts. For more information, go to BloombergLive.com/TYA Luxury. Invitation code RADIO.
In-depth analysis.
It's another Friday afternoon, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick to enjoy a warm Bayesian welcome.
How are you doing? Enjoying the sunshine?
Fly from London Gatwick to Barbados with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £699 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Cold Friday afternoons like this are cruel. You cough, you splutter, so does your car. Its battery dead, killed by an icy claw. Will anyone stand up to winter? Yes, you. Come to Halfords. We fit new batteries on the spot from just £15, and we're open late 7 days a week. See halfords.com for opening hours. Here in Chiswick. Ready for the cold snap? Ready for anything. Halfords, for life's journeys.
Batteries sold separately. Selected vehicles only in most stores.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and V Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
You're stuck indoors, waiting for a delivery.
But you should be at the match with your mates. Get in!
You want to be home when the kids get back from school.
Hey, guys.
But you've got to work late. Again.
With Ring Video Doorbell, you can do both. Featuring HD video and two-way talk, you can see, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are, all on your phone. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
It's one small step for man, one giant shop. Sorry, 2 giant shops a month at 10% off with the new Tesco Club Card Plus. Oh, and double data from Tesco Mobile, all for $7.99 every month.
New Tesco Club Card Plus. Value you can't stop talking about. Subscribe online today. £200 max spend per shop, in-store spend only, club card app required, exclusions apply, double data only on pay monthly, home from home destinations. First payment payable up front, subject to status, see online for details.
Far wing, elevates, triple bucket!
The war of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut it.
To the sideline, the man bleeds for 3.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Pump fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on the
Search
right block.
NBA today to start listening.
Good. Here's a swing and a drive deep to right field. Looking up. Goodbye, baseball.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off homers, follow TuneIn on social media to discover the latest and greatest in live sports.
With the 24th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft.
From live reminders that the biggest MLB games are on the air, to recommendations of the best new sports talk shows and podcasts.
He's going to be fine. He's going to be good right away in 3 years.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets. Trump told reporters today that the U.S. has not agreed to a rollback of all tariffs on China as negotiations between the world's 2 biggest economies drag on. And that comment, stocks dropped but have come off lows. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is down 0.1%, down 2. Dow's down 0.2%, down 54. And the NASDAQ is little changed, up 4. The 10-year is up 2/32, the yield 1.91%. West Texas Intermediate crude is down 2.1% at 55.96 a barrel. The dollar-yen stands at 109.17. The euro $1.10.23. The British pound $1.28.10. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
Thank you so much, Greg Jarrett. Right now, let's turn our attention to Disney. Shares were up as much as 6%. They are off earlier highs. People are considering the Disney Plus offering and how it may start to compare with Netflix. Joining us now is Geetha Ranganathan, U.S. media analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. Geetha, can you give us a sense of exactly what the optimistic case is here for Disney?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a lot of enthusiasm and there's a lot of euphoria on their streaming service. Obviously, a lot of anticipation and pent-up demand for the product. I think they obviously check the box when it comes to the price point. It's an extremely compelling $7 price point. They check the box when it comes to content. They have some of the best-in-class brands with Marvel, Pixar, and Lucas. But I think they were also underestimating the overseas subscriber potential as well as the reacceleration.
Geetha, yeah. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to break in here. Geetha Ranganathan, we're going to have to get back to you right now. President Trump speaking outside the White House. Let's take a listen.
For the most part, I never even heard of these people. I have no idea who they are. They're some very fine people. You have some never-Trumpers. It seems that nobody has any first-hand knowledge. There is no first-hand knowledge. And all that matters is one thing, the transcript. And the transcript is perfect. Mark Levin last night on television, who's a great constitutional lawyer, he broke it down. He said, what Trump said, and he was respectful, he said, President Trump. What President Trump said was perfect on the transcript. What he said on that telephone call with the president of Ukraine was perfect. He said, nothing else matters. And what he said was perfect. And he analyzed it, every line, every paragraph. It was not complex. It was perfect. Nothing else matters. With that being said, every one of those people cancel themselves out. So what they do is they go all over Washington. Let's find the 10 people that hate President Trump the most, and let's put him up there. Now, in some cases, they really turned out to be very much honest and fair, but in no cases have I been hurt. In no cases that I see have I been hurt.
What do you say to millions of people who don't believe you? What do you say to millions that don't believe you?
Well, they shouldn't be having public hearings. This is a hoax. This is just like the Russian witch hunt. This is just a continuation. When you look at the lawyer for the whistleblower, I thought it ended when they found out that the lawyer was so compromised. I mean, the lawyer's the bad guy. So you look at that, I thought that was the end of it. No, this is just a continuation of the hoax. It's a disgraceful thing. In the meantime, we've got the best markets we've ever had, stock markets. We have the best unemployment numbers we've ever had. We have the best employment numbers we've ever had. We have almost 160 million people. We've never been even close to that. So we're doing it, but unfortunately, you people don't want to talk about that.
China, can you tell me whether a tariff rollback will be part of the phase one funding?
Well, they'd like to have a rollback. I haven't agreed to anything. China would like to get somewhat of a rollback, not a complete rollback, because they know I won't do it. But we're getting along very well with China. They want to make a deal. Frankly, they want to make a deal a lot more than I do. I'm very happy right now. We're taking in billions of dollars. I'm very happy. China would like to make a deal much more than I would.
Will you endorse Jeff Sessions in his Alabama Senate run?
Well, I haven't gotten involved. I saw he said very nice things about me last night, but we'll have to see. I'll have to see. I haven't made a determination. Yeah, go ahead. I don't even think about it.
Mr. President, so what do you say to the millions of people who just don't believe you, that you have something and that your transcript shows that you did something wrong? What do you tell them?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's a very simple thing. I had a very good call with the president of Ukraine. I assume that's what you're talking about. The call was perfect. Now, thereafter, I have a second call, but nobody knew about, and I guess they want that call to be produced also. You've heard that, John. So I have a second call. I had a second call with the president, which actually I believe came before this one. And now they all want that one. And if they want it, I'll give it to them. I haven't seen it recently, but I'll give it to them. But I had a call before this one with the president of Ukraine. I understand they'd like it, and I have no problem giving it to them. I have no problem.
Mr. President, on the Biden, did you ask Bill Barr or anyone in your Department of Justice to investigate the Bidens? And if not, you didn't ask them, why would you ask the President of Ukraine to do something you weren't willing to ask your own Justice Department?
We are looking for corruption. We're giving hundreds of millions of dollars, and we're looking for corruption. And all you have to do is take a look at Biden, and you will see tremendous corruption. Because what he did is quid pro quo times 10.
Did you ask
and let me just say, be quiet. Quiet.
Did you ask your DOJ?
Quiet. Quiet.
Did you ask the DOJ?
Are you ready?
Yes,
I never spoke to him about anything. It's up to Bill Barr. Bill Barr can do whatever he wants to do. But I saw the same tape on television, and the tape shows that Joe Biden is a crook. He's 100% crooked. And the fake news, which is you don't want to do anything about it. His son walked out with millions of dollars from Ukraine, millions of dollars from China. He doesn't know anything. He walked away with a stash. It's a corrupt deal. It's a corrupt enterprise. And if the
We've been listening to President Trump. He's been speaking outside of the White House, talking about everything from the investigation into impeachment, as well as the potential tariff rollback. The tariff rollback, the fact that the U.S. had not agreed to that yet with China, moving markets initially, although markets have come back quite a bit. Right now, we are looking at mixed markets, although still in the red for the S&P and Dow. NASDAQ currently up six basis points here. Let's get back to one of the big movers, and that is Disney. Shares have been surging up as much as 6% ahead of the market open, currently off that high, but still up 3.9%. Geeta Ranganathan joining us now from Bloomberg Intelligence to continue the conversation here. And basically, Disney gearing up with agreements with Amazon and with a whole host of other providers. I thought the Amazon connection was the really quite interesting given the fact that Amazon has a competing product of Amazon Prime. How is that at play here, if at all?
Oh, that deal adds tremendously to Disney's distribution muscle. Amazon's Fire Stick is the second largest streaming device distributor next to Roku, and Disney really needs that distribution outlet to hit lofty subscriber goals. So I think that is absolutely critical for them to get to their goals.
I'm wondering what your sense is about the number of subscriptions an average consumer could have, an average household. What's sort of the party line on that?
I think it's, obviously we're heading for somewhat of a shakeout with all of these new barrage of services that are going to flood the market. But I think that the average consumer will be forced to take the Netflix, Disney, and then probably another 2 or 3 services. So maybe tops out at about 5.
All right, tops out at 5, which means that somebody is going to feel the pain on the other side. I'm wondering what Disney's plan is to move beyond the kid offerings, right? I mean, because that's sort of what they're known for. Where is the plan for that?
Yeah, so yesterday was the first time that we actually heard Disney talk really seriously from a strategic standpoint about Hulu. I mean, they've always, the Hulu story has always been a little bit wishy-washy because of the complex ownership, but now with Comcast kind of relinquishing operational control, Disney is really taking Hulu seriously, and it's actually going to become the streaming platform for FX. So I think that was a real game-changing moment. I think they're very serious about Hulu. And then we saw the nice reacceleration in the ESPN Plus subscriber base as well. So they're firing on all cylinders, I think, even when it comes to their streaming product.
When you talk about the content is king tone that we've heard for a while, they're planning to spend, $1 billion a year, I believe, on new content. Is that right?
Yes, $1 billion for the first year, almost $2.5 billion when you account for all of the licensed content as well.
Do we have a sense of what the emphasis will be on for that content?
So it's going to be more and more on the originals, and they have a really, really good strategy here, because if you see what they're doing next year, for instance, they're taking a little bit of a pause in their film slate, but they're kind of really revving up the momentum with their Disney Plus originals, which kind of then lead into their films for the 2021 slate. So it's really a very, very smart strategy to draw subscribers in and to kind of keep them engaged and enticed, and build up that excitement for the film franchise as well.
I'm struggling to understand how the different streaming services are distinguishing themselves in a sort of more holistic way. I'm thinking about Netflix. What will Netflix be able to say other than we have Stranger Things to get people to stick with them?
So Netflix has kind of anticipated this moment, I think, for a very long time now. So they've really, I think where they're really going to succeed is with their global diversification. So they're investing more across the globe in local language content that's actually resonating well throughout the world. And that content is much cheaper to produce. They're also going into unscripted content, so reality, if you will. That, again, is much cheaper to produce. Animation, another genre, which is cost effective. So they're taking all these steps, moving into content areas which might be a little bit cheaper than the scripted content fare, and which might resonate very well across a broader audience base.
What about the penetration rate in the United States? How many households already have cut the cord and are focused on streaming services at this point? Do we have a sense of the sort of shift at this point?
Oh yeah, they're definitely, the shift has been coming fast and furious. It's only going to get uglier if you look at some of the cord-cutting numbers out there this quarter. So about over the past 5 years or so, we've lost about 20% of the traditional subscriber base. Over the next 5 years, we probably lose another 20 to 25% at least. And so by the end, I mean, over a 10-year span, the industry is set to lose almost 40 to 50% of its subscriptions, which means you go from 100 million subscriptions to basically half that number.
So, Geeta, before I let you go, I want to know how much I'm going to be paying for my Netflix and Disney and all of and Hulu or whatever streaming service they go under. How much I'm going to be paying. I'm wondering what the break-even point is, or what the goal is in terms of how much they're going to charge for these subscriptions.
Yeah, I think right now, Netflix is going to be very careful about raising prices, especially with Disney kind of coming in and undercutting them, and then Apple coming in and undercutting Disney. Right now, from a pricing standpoint, it almost seems like it's a little bit of a race to the bottom. You have Comcast, which is coming out next year, which is essentially going to be a free service. And so we're seeing this kind of nice mix here, really, between the subscription services and then the advertising-supported services kind of picking up the slack a little bit.
Geeta Ranganathan, thank you so much for joining us. She covers all things media for us for Bloomberg Intelligence. And I will just say that this has been an area of great speculation. How much of a hit will Netflix take as Disney unveils its Plus streaming service? Right now, it looks like people are not that concerned, at least if you take a small move today in the shares, up 1.1% currently as Disney also surges. I want to shift gears a little bit. We have seen this push-pull in markets with any headline on trade whipsawing sentiment. Earlier this morning, President Trump coming out and saying that the U.S. has not agreed to roll back tariffs. And you did see a bit of a swoon among equities, although the NASDAQ now up 0.2%. Joining us now, Matt Maley, Chief Market Strategist at Miller Tabak. Matt, thanks so much for being with us. I'm trying to get a sense right now of whether markets are just inclined to go higher and will use the news as an excuse to push that way.
Well, it certainly seems that way. When we do get some negative news on the trade front, the market kind of stalls, but doesn't really get hit. It goes down a little bit, but it doesn't get hit hard. Mentioned today it went down a little bit. The S&P, I think, was down 6 or 7 points at its worst level, so not bad at all. And yet, when we get positive news, it charges in higher and moves 20 points or more on the S&P. So people seem to have pushed that to the side. I don't know if that's the best thing to do in the world, but right now the market is kind of looking past these things and moving higher. To be perfectly honest with you, though, I think it would be best if we saw a little bit of a breather here before Thanksgiving, kind of work off some of this overbought condition we've got on a short-term basis. That gives us a better chance to rally even more later in the year, I think.
What about what we're seeing in bond markets? It seemed like there was sort of a tipping point yesterday where yields, once they crossed that threshold, just throttled upward. What do you make of that?
Well, it's this 1.9% was 2% a round number, but on a technical basis, the 1.9% was kind of the key level. To be honest with you, I think it's getting a little ahead of itself. I'm not so sure. People are trying to, I think, extrapolate that this phase one deal means that the economy is going to suddenly take off next year, and I'm not sure that's the case. I mean, we see the earnings reports this season have been they've beaten expectations, but they always do. And if anything, future quarters have been lowered a little bit. And the economy, the Atlanta GDP Fed now is actually come down a little bit. So I don't think we're going to see an explosion of growth as we move into 2020. And the second and third phases of the trade issue are going to be much harder to get agreement on. So I think the market's getting a little ahead of itself near term, but. We'll see what happens. I mean, we could get a melt up, too. I mean, funny things happen at the end of the year.
What's your sense of positioning right now? Tilted to the bearish or the bullish?
Well, I mean, the thing is, people, I think, are rotating. I mean, it's people they're talking, had been talking on the bearish side of things. That shifted in a significant way in the last couple of weeks. Now that we've broken to new highs. But if we can push higher here, I think one of the things, one of the things I wrote about this morning is the energy sector. I mean, if there's one way institutional investors can play catch up at the end of the year, is if they can latch onto a group that's been lagging badly and that nobody else owns. And the energy sector is certainly one of those. And it's trying to break out here. If it does, and that group starts to rally, it could be the big winner of the last 6 to 8 weeks of the year.
So, Matt, when you say it's oversold, what metric are you looking at to determine its oversoldness?
In terms on the
energy sector.
Energy sector, yeah. Well, two things. Number one, it's been lagging badly behind both the S&P, the stock market, but more importantly, it's been lagging behind the price of oil. I mean, crude oil is up 32% from the December lows of last year, where the XLE is only up 13% and the XOP is a similar amount. So they're way behind the price of crude oil. But more importantly, they're less than 5% of the S&P 500. So it shows that they're under-owned. And when groups get under-owned, I mean, that's when people really make the best money. When groups have been lagging for a while, when they're oversold and overhated and under-owned, when they bounce back, people rush into them, and that's when you can make really your best money.
When you say overhated and oversold, I think financials, because that certainly has been one laggard also this year. Where do you stand on those?
Well, it's funny. I've been very cautious negative on the group for 2 years and became much more constructive more recently as the bond market has moved up. I mean, a lot of analysts in the financial sector constantly say, you have to look past the bond market. We have to look past the yield curve. The fact of the matter is, theoretically that's the case, but in actuality, that's what's been driving these the bank stocks for a while now, and we're finally getting relief there. As you mentioned, the bond market's trying to break up above that key resistance level. I'm sorry, the interest rates are moving above the key resistance level of 1.9%. The yield curve is widening out, steepening, I should say. That's bullish for the group. Again, a little overbought near term because it's had a nice run here. But if we can sustain these higher levels of interest rates, even though they're still relatively low on a long-term basis, it should be very beneficial for that group.
We're speaking with Matt Maley, Chief Market Strategist of Miller Tabak, on a quiet day. Mixed indexes, Treasury yields is sort of range-bound right now after some mixed headlines on trade. We could see the 10-year yield, after having surged by 50 basis points the past 3 months, now currently 1.917%. So, Matt, when we talk about bond yields, there's a question: what is the key number for 10-year Treasury yields to get to, at which point they impede the stock rally? What do you think that is?
Well, that's a good point because, for the longest time, higher yields, it scared people to death. And, of course, we saw that in the fourth quarter of last year. The problem is, on the one hand, is that what is causing the rise in interest rates? Right now, it seems to be when they're caused a little bit artificially, or when the Fed purposely moves to raise short-term interest rates, which tends to move long-term interest rates as well. That's negative because it's kind of an artificial move. The Fed's doing that to slow the economy down. That's what they've done in the past. However, when they go up kind of on their own, because we're starting to see some improvement in the economy, or at least in this case, it seems to be a flattening out of the decline and the slowdown. That's a little bit more bullish, so it gives us a little bit more room. That said, I think you get much. If you get up to 2.5%, a lot of people said 3 to 4% would be the big problem. I think 2.5% will start to scare people. We're already seeing it. Some of the housing stocks starting to lose some gas there, and of course that's very important to the economy. So it's still a fragile recovery, and it's the weakest recovery of all of them, even though it's been going on for the longest period of time. And so we're very sensitive to it. So I don't think it takes a major rise in rates from here to create some problems.
So it's November 8th. People are already starting to order their turkeys and figure out their Thanksgiving plans and drawing up their year-end forecast for 2020. Is it too early for you to give a sense of what you think the returns will be like on the broad indexes next year?
It is a little bit because we want to see if the slowdown the abating of the slowdown, or the slowdown of the slowdown.
The second derivative slowdown, Matt. You outdid yourself. Carry on.
But if you see if it really it turns into something where it actually turns back up, that we're going to need a little bit more evidence of that. We'll get that as we move through November and into early December. The one thing though is kind of interesting because one of the things that I've kind of had to catch myself is that, geez, if the third year, if the year before an election year is a really strong one, that leaves a little bit less upside for the market in the election year. But you know something? I went down and looked at the past. It's like that's actually not always the case. Yes, sometimes we take away from the election year when the third year is really strong, but not always. We have several examples of the last 40, 50 years where a very strong third year of the presidential cycle has been followed by another strong year therefore I'm not as concerned about this rally as I had been in the past. But again, I just don't know that we're going to get the phase one deal. I don't think it's going to be enough to give the market as much of a boost as a lot of people are thinking, and that I think that the second and third phases will be much more difficult to get through, and therefore we're going to have some headwinds to face in the market, and that's going to make it tough for a big year next year. Again, and not to be rambling on here too much, but people should be looking at some of the areas outside of the U.S. because
I was actually just going to go there. Carry on.
Yeah, sure. It's just everybody talk about, we're starting to see emerging markets pick up. We're seeing actually even European stocks do better, Japanese stocks, South Korea, etc. But this has actually been going on for a little bit longer. It's been almost 3 months now that all these kind of areas, emerging markets, Europe, etc., have outperformed the S&P. Not by a lot, but they are starting to outperform. And I remember a year and a half ago, the beginning of 2018, when everybody was saying Europe's the place to be. Got to go to Europe. Well, it turned out to be the worst place to be. Now everybody's saying Europe is the last place you want to be. Well, it's starting to show signs that it might be picking up. So don't be just concentrating on the U.S. It's been a while now that we've been it's been outperforming, but we know everything goes in cycles, and so people might be able to make some better returns outside the U.S. than here.
Just real quick here, how much are you watching the election next year?
Well, it's going to be. It's going to be quite important. This new news. I mean, there's this guy. What's his name? Gosh, Michael Bloomberg, who seems to be getting into the.
Haven't heard of him.
He never heard of him, right? I think this is a situation where it's going to be a very viable alternative, and suddenly you have a situation where people are thinking, "Gosh, if it's Elizabeth Warren or any Democrat, it's going to be bad for the markets." Suddenly, if it's Michael Bloomberg, I don't know that that's going to be the case. I think people will be he's much more moderate and. Would be much more constructive.
And Matt Maley, we're going to leave it there. Matt Maley is a chief market strategist at Miller Tabak. And just by way of full disclosure, Michael Bloomberg is the majority owner and the head of Bloomberg LP, the owner of Bloomberg Radio and Bloomberg Television here. Right now, we are looking at mixed markets after a series of headlines on trade, kind of range-bound, basically. Although NASDAQ gaining a little bit more steam, up 0.1%. Bond yields flat after rising 50 basis points in the past 3 months as people reassess the end of the world trade and say, maybe it's not so bad. Coming up, we're going to be talking about municipal bonds. They have been on a tear. Foreign investors pouring money into them. Plus, we'll take a look at emerging markets credit also outperforming as people reassess the risks there. I'm Lisa Abramowitz, Paul Sweeney off today. This is Bloomberg Markets.
They like new developments.
It's another Friday afternoon. Yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick to see spectacular coral reefs and white sand beaches. Fly from London Gatwick to Mauritius with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £949 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Teaching shapes lives. Becoming a teacher means a career of opportunities. You could head a subject department or work towards school leadership. And with a minimum starting salary of £24,000 to £30,000, teaching has never been so rewarding. Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. Search Get Into Teaching. Starting salary dependent on location.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and V Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
The NBA is on TuneIn Premium.
He shoots it. It's good. It's a 1-point lead. They don't have a timeout.
Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss.
Wiggins straight away on the triple try. Bingo. He knocks it down at the buzzer.
The defending champions, Toronto Raptors, are in LA to take on the red-hot LA Lakers. Tip-off is at 9:30 p.m. Eastern this Sunday. Search NBA on TuneIn to follow your favorite NBA team today.
Good. Here's a swing and a drive deep to right field. Looking up. Goodbye, baseball.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off homers, follow TuneIn on social media to discover the latest and greatest in live sports.
With the 24th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft.
From live reminders that the biggest MLB games are on the air to recommendations of the best new sports talk shows and podcasts.
He's going to be fine. He's going to be good right away in 3 years.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn. College football is live on TuneIn. Listen for free to games from more than 140 schools all season long. This Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, number 1 LSU is taking on number 2 Alabama with a battle between LSU's quarterback Joe Burrow and Alabama's QB Tua Tagovailoa. Both are potential number 1 picks in the NFL draft. Listen to every call, every game of your school all season long for free on TuneIn. Just search college to listen today.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Are we on the brink of a more serious downturn?
I've always thought of the municipal bond market as a little bit of a safe haven.
Banks are going to have to start paying their depositors more.
Are we still in that mode where we're buying the dips?
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
Cash, if you're looking at Treasury bills, provides a higher return than stocks and bonds here in the U.S.
Your consumer is a woman, you're more likely to be a growth company.
Longer-term interest rates can go down, even with short-term interest rates still going up a little bit.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Coming up, we'll take a look at the fortunes of Gap as it pushes out its chief executive officer looking for a new vision. Plus, we'll take a look at the municipal bond market as cash just keeps on flooding in. Right now, though, let's head over to our own Greg Jarrett for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
I've got it, Lisa. Stocks slipped right after the president said there was no deal with China yet. But stocks do remain on track to finish the week with gains as investors hope for progress there. Oil's lower. Stephen Staley, Amherst Pierpont Securities chief economist, tells Bloomberg it feels as if the price of oil is stuck in a range.
You know, I don't have any better insight into where oil prices are headed than anyone else, but it does seem at this point like the world oil market is pretty well supplied. I think the U.S. continues to ramp up production, and that has taken away a lot of the market power that OPEC had in the past, and that might speak to a more stable set of oil prices over time.
Right now, the guys down 1.25%. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is little change now, down less than 1. The Dow is down 0.1%, down 42, and the Nasdaq's up 0.2%, up 17. 10-year is up 4/30 seconds. The yield 1.90%. Back to West Texas Intermediate crude priced at $56.44 barrels, down 1.25%. COMEX gold's up 0.1% at $14.6750 an ounce. The dollar yen 109.13, the euro $1.10.20, the British pound $1.27.95. That's your Bloomberg Business Flash. Bloomberg Markets continues now with La Reina de Negocios, Lisa Abramowitz.
La Reina de Negocios, the best title ever. Greg Jarrett, thank you for making my day. Right now, let's turn to the king of news, Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks editor, joining us here in our Interactive Broker studios, who will speak entirely in Spanish and have all sorts of superlatives for me, I'm sure. Let's take a look, though, at the Russell 2000 to save you the effort and take a look at the gains that we're seeing there.
Well, my Spanish is no better than the El Blumbito feed on Twitter. Let's leave it there.
All right,
in any case, moving on, looking at smaller companies, they're higher like their larger peers. The Russell 2000 index up 0.2%, while the S&P 500 is little change. The biggest gain in the Russell belongs to TrueCar, whose ticker is True. GRUE. The Auto Information Service has climbed more than 32%. The company avoided a third quarter loss that analysts had expected as revenue beat the average estimate in a Bloomberg survey. Axon Enterprise, ticker AAXN, has risen 28%. The maker of police body cameras and taser stun guns posted third quarter revenue that beat projections. And Dermira, ticker DERM, has gained 25.5%. The drug developer is working on a treatment for a skin condition called atopic dermatitis, and a would-be rival medicine from Anaptys Bio failed in a mid-stage study. Anaptys Bio's ticker is ANAB, and it has the Russell's biggest loss. It's down 69%. And Red Lion Hotels, ticker RLH, has fallen 55.5%. The company had an unexpected loss for the second quarter in a row as revenue missed estimates. CEO Greg Mount resigned effective immediately.
Thank you so much, Dave Wilson, here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. So let's take a look at Gap. Art Peck out. He will not be the one to deliver the look-ahead plan for the company that has been struggling quite significantly. Joining us here, Matt Townsend, who covers all things retail for us at Bloomberg News. So right now I'm looking at the shares down, 7%? And I'm trying to figure out why, if Art Peck was the wrong guy for the job.
Well, there's a lot of moving parts here. It just paints a picture of a company that's a little bit of a mess, or a lot of mess right now. You know, firing your CEO, and he was fired right before the holidays, is not a great sign. They had just done an investor day a couple months ago where he talked about the bright future for the company. There's also this interesting thing they're doing where they're spinning off Old Navy. So Old Navy is its best performing brand. It's the majority of the company's revenue, and it's supposed to be spun off in 2020, end of 2020. That was Art Peck's idea. He was the driving force behind it. So now there's a question of, is that going to happen? And also they reported that they sort of pre-reported their third quarter results, and they're not good. All the brands are declining, even Old Navy, which for many years was the lone bright spot of the company.
What's the problem with Gap?
You know, the basic problem for Gap, the brand, is that they never won over the next generation of consumers, right? So they had Gen X. Gen X were big shoppers at Gap, and they never won over millennials. Basically, the same can be said for Banana Republic, but to a lesser extent. And then Old Navy's been a growing part of the business. So those are their three main brands. That's what drive the company. So two of the brands are really struggling. Old Navy was supposed to be the shining star. They were going to spin it off because they thought it was undervalued, and now that looks maybe it's like it's in doubt because Art Peck's gone. One of the Fisher family members who's on the board is now taking over the CEO role on an interim basis. So there's just a lot of question marks. And this has been the story for the Gap Inc. for, basically a decade. It's been a slow decline.
You raised a really good point, which is this highlights a company in disarray. Why would they fire Art Peck right now, after 5 years, right before the holiday season, without lining someone else up behind him?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a great sign. He was not just CEO for 5 years. He was at the company for 15. He ran some of the brands before that. So there's no succession plan. The company, it put out bad third quarter results. So there must have been some straw that broke the camel's back with Art Peck and the board. And again, the company is basically controlled by the Fisher family, who are the family that founded the company. So it must have been at some point they just said we have to make a move. There's a lot of speculation about what's going to happen next. Does the spinoff get canceled?
This raises governance issues. I mean, we talk about ESG. The G issue is in a real question mark right here. Where is the board?
Yeah, good question again. I mean, it's an interesting company because, like I said, the Fisher family, they have 3 seats on the board. They're the biggest shareholders. It's a public company, but it's sort of in their control. So they have an opportunity to do something that, in a way that they want to, that might irk shareholders. So yeah, governance issues I think you can bring up. There's a big question mark about, is the Gap brand, the Gap brand stores, is that even a viable brand anymore? They're closing a bunch of stores. I was talking to an analyst this morning. He basically said, who's not to say in 5 or 10 years there just isn't a Gap brand?
I'm looking right now at Gap shares. They're down more than 31% year to date. I'm trying to understand the identity of Gap. I remember when I was in junior high school. In high school, it was the staples. You could go there and get a reliable pair of jeans and a T-shirt. Now it's 40% coupon.
Exactly. The operating margin outside of Old Navy for the company is 2%. So how
does that compare to the average?
I mean,
not good.
Yeah, not good. I mean,
right.
A lot more. So, but a lot of that is discounting. I mean, they still generate a lot of revenue, but in many respects they're giving clothes away almost because there's so many discounts. The brand's totally been not totally, but has been very much hurt by all the discounting. We have a Gap and Banana Republic actually across the street from our offices, and when it's not 50% off, it's surprising. So it just paints a picture of a retailer that doesn't value its products, that can't sell products at full price. And yeah, they've had problems with identity. What kind of design do they want to do? Do they want to stick with the classics? They want to go more fashion. They've brought in a slew of different designers and creative directors, and none of it has worked. So we'll see. I mean, like you said, Gap is a sort of a rudderless brand at this point that doesn't have a lot of identity.
Well, on that happy note, Matt Townsend, thank you so much for joining today. Matt Townsend covers all things retail at Bloomberg News. We are looking at Gap shares lower today, down 31.2% year to date as it tries to find a direction going forward. Art Peck has been fired. Replacement TBD. Right now, let's head over to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager with World National Headlines. Nathan.
Lisa, President Trump says he may release a transcript of his first phone call with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky as the impeachment probe into his July 25th call with the Ukrainian president moves into the public phase.
Now they all want that one, and if they want it, I'll give it to them. I haven't seen it recently, but I'll give it to them. But I had a call before this one with the president of Ukraine. I understand they'd like it, and I have no problem giving it to them.
Speaking with reporters outside the White House, the president also says he doesn't have a problem with the testimony that's come out of closed-door hearings so far. Acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney had been subpoenaed to give his own deposition. He was a no-show. President Trump also is downplaying progress on a U.S.-China trade deal, saying he has not agreed to roll back tariffs.
They'd like to have a rollback. I haven't agreed to anything. China would like to get somewhat of a rollback, not a complete rollback, because they know I won't do it.
The president also says China wants a deal, and if he were to sign one, he would do it in the U.S. The president also says he wants to raise the legal age for vaping to 21 and is looking at limiting the flavors the industry can offer. The president says his administration will announce a plan on that next week. In Hong Kong, protesters have gathered at the parking garage where a 22-year-old university student fell after police fired tear gas over the weekend. That student died at the hospital this morning. The official cause of that student's fall has not been officially determined, but demonstrators have accused police of heavy-handed tactics as their pro-democracy demonstration is now more than 5 months old. Global news, 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
In a perfect world, you'd be listening at exactly the same moment the most important things are said.
Negotiations over a trade deal are advancing.
Instead, we designed the perfect show.
They discussed risks and the transition to renewable energy.
June Grasso and Ed Baxter.
The conversation continues with a focus on trade.
Bloomberg Best, weekday evenings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Listen, as a hiring manager, I've got to tell you, the best job candidate isn't always the typical candidate. Sometimes they're a grad of life.
Meet the grads of life. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
Sometimes the best candidates aren't the ones you're used to.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
Join us in New York City on...
It's another Friday afternoon. Yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick to see spectacular coral reefs and white sand beaches. Fly from London Gatwick to Mauritius with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £949 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
The S in Audi S-Line stands for many things like sporty, stylish, streamlined, and now seductively priced. Like the new Audi A4 S-Line, which you can now have from £359 per month, £2,154 initial rental. Test drive one at your local Audi centre, but you'll have to be swift. The offer ends soon. Search Audi S-Line. Audi, Vorsprung durch Technik. With 48-month contract hire, 10,000 miles per annum, 18s and over, subject to status. Damage charges may apply. No ownership. Ordered by 31st of December 2019 from participating centres. Audi Financial Services. Visit audi.co.uk.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Watford, there's nothing like coming back to a warm home after a long day at work, especially when you've been stuck at a cold train station in rush hour for what seems like an eternity. Luckily, with Hive Active Heating, rated 5-star on Trustpilot, you can turn your heating on from wherever you are. And now with our new Hive radiator valves, you can even control your heating room by room. Search Hive Heating to buy now. Hive services require broadband and Wi-Fi. Terms apply.
Vitality Health Insurance.
Oh, hi. Is it true if I join Vitality, I get de facto 5-star rated cover, can speak to a GP 24/7, get rewarded for staying active with things like Starbucks coffee, get a little sausage dog to live with me, and you could beat my current premium by up to 10%?
Absolutely. Except one of those.
It's the dog, isn't it?
Yeah.
Time to review your health insurance. Just search Vitality Health. Vitality. Positively different. Minimum monthly premiums, terms and conditions apply.
Hey. Can't watch the big NBA game because your life's just too busy? I've got some news for you. TuneIn Premium is the answer to all your problems. Hear every home and away game live or on demand everywhere you go. Just search NBA to listen.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Good. Here's a swing and a drive deep to right field. Looking up. Goodbye, baseball.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off homers, follow TuneIn on social media to discover the latest and greatest in live sports.
With the 24th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft.
From live reminders that the biggest MLB games are on the air, to recommendations of the best new sports talk shows and podcasts.
He's going to be fine. He's going to be good right away in 3 years.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks are drifting, a little changed after President Trump said that the U.S. has not agreed to a tariff rollback with China, dimming hopes for a preliminary trade deal next month. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is down 0.1%, down 2. The Dow's down 0.25%, down 70. The Nasdaq is up 0.1%, up 11. The 10-year's up 430 seconds. The yield 1.90%. West Texas Intermediate crude's down 1.25%. 56.42 a barrel right now. COMEX Gold's up 0.1% at 14.6830 an ounce. The dollar yen 109.12. The euro's $1.10.19. And the British pound $1.27.89. Well, yacht sales are off. Boat and recreational vehicle sales, as well as dinners at pricey steakhouses and elective plastic surgery, are good barometers of the economy and raise concern if they drop consistently. And right now might be a good time if you've got the money to go out and buy that yacht, Lisa. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
Now on Bloomberg Markets, Munis in Focus with Joe Mysak.
It is that time of week. Focus on Munis is brought to you by Build America Mutual. BAM Green Star bonds finance projects that protect and restore the environment with more renewable energy and efficient transportation and buildings. Visit buildamerica.com/Greenstar. BAM, Building America. The one, the only, the Joe Mysak in the Interactive Broker Studios with us here today. And he has some exceptional things to report about new records being broken in the municipal bond market. Joe, take it away.
Oh, thank you, Lisa.
So, no, what records are we talking about here?
Well, the municipal market has had 44 weeks of inflows, and we have $54 billion have come into the market over that period. And that is a record amount of cash, breaking the previous record, which was $53.7 billion.
Basically, this has been sort of expected, correct? People were expecting there to be the record broken?
Oh, yeah.
Because of the pace of the flows into,
It's just been a very good year for the municipal market. You're going to have performance numbers that are, outstanding. You've had very good amount of issuance, real nice pickup during the last several months here. So things it's peak muni.
It's peak muni, and I'm just wondering whether people are saying that there still is value, or whether at this point the yield has been squeezed to such a degree versus treasuries that people are sort of raising the caution flag.
We had a nice little bounce up in yields over the last couple of weeks, so I don't think people are ready to throw it in. And I know we carried a quote the other week, or a couple of days ago actually, saying that there's nothing that would interrupt this flow of funds. There's nothing on the horizon right now until the end of the year that is going to stop, investors from looking at municipal bonds and being very constructive on the asset class.
All right. So when we talk about municipal bonds, we often talk about U.S. taxpayers looking to reduce their tax bills and finding haven in these tax-free municipal debt. But it's not just U.S. investors. A lot of foreign investors have also been piling in. Can you talk a little about that?
Oh, well, we had a very interesting story this week about how foreign investors have really increased their holdings. So they're now over $100 billion. And they... what they see in the municipal market is yield, as opposed to non-existent yield in some of the sovereigns that they're looking at. So Danielle Moran this week did a story about where she mentioned this finance officer of the Dallas-Fort Worth airport, and he had been on basically a world tour, helping to sell almost $1 billion in bonds that the airport marketed, I think, back in August. And obviously really building up the frequent flyer miles and getting a tremendous response, and telling Danielle that, yes, he was going to do it again.
Well, here's my question, not to be too much of Debbie Downer, but on one hand, when the tide is turning up, this is very positive for municipal debt. On the way down, though, this is a new feature in a market that is full of a lot of different individual CUSIPs, idiosyncratic stories. This is not a monolith. It's even less of a monolith than the corporate debt market, which has also similar kind of disparate aspects of it. How could this play out if there is a tide reversal?
Well, the thing about the municipal market now is that you're talking about the overseas investors, and these overseas investors are unlikely to reverse course and just dump their holdings when you say the tide goes out. On the other hand, they're really only interested in very, very well-known names. They're not going to be looking at the really small $10 million school district issue. So they will look at Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, City of New York, MTA, San Francisco, your big cities, your very familiar issuers.
So you're starting to see a divergence between the big issuers, the sort of on-the-run ones, and the off-the-run, or the smaller issuers not getting as many bids?
Oh, no. Right now,
there's money everywhere.
There is money everywhere, and they are, the buyers are just scooping up everything.
All right, so real quick here, what's your favorite project that you've seen put out there to finance?
Wow. That's a hard one, but it's probably the one that turns sewage into biofuel in Union County, New Jersey.
Sewage into biofuel.
They're called biochar.
Biochar. So this is a new plant. How much is the plant going to cost?
That issue was about $50 million. And there have been, over the last couple of years, we've seen several like this. But we shall see, which ones succeed and which ones default.
All right, Joe Mysak covering all things municipal debt and turning sewage into biofuel for us here at Bloomberg News, and also, of course, editing the Bloomberg Brief focused on the municipal debt market.
That's it?
That's it. Oh. It's Friday. Happy Friday. Yeah, and honestly, the amount of cash, not entirely surprising given the pace earlier, but just absolutely astronomical given the fact that we still have almost 2 months left before the end of the year, already surpassing the previous record, $54.1 billion of flows into muni bond mutual funds. They are the sweet spot for not only U.S., but also increasingly for foreign investors. I'm Lisa Abramowitz. Paul Sweeney off today. This is Bloomberg Markets.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stocks have come back from earlier lows and are now trading little changed. President Trump told reporters that the U.S. hasn't agreed to a rollback of tariffs on China as negotiations drag on. This is dimming hopes for a preliminary trade deal next month. Disney shares are higher in trading after quarterly profit topped estimates. Anticipation is also high for the debut of Disney Plus next week. The company also reached an agreement to put its new streaming service on Amazon, Samsung, and LG devices. Sears and Kmart are closing another 96 stores, renewing doubts about the long-term future of the department store. The move will bring the number of Sears and Kmart locations down to 182. The announcement shows that Sears is still withering as consumers move on from the chain. And Matchbox Cars, the coloring book, and the collectible card game Magic the Gathering were inducted into the National Toy Hall of Fame. Recognized for an enduring appeal that keeps them on store shelves today. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
Hi, we're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that our daughters have what they need to grow and learn. But that isn't the case for nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. that struggle with hunger.
Childhood hunger is a heartbreaking reality that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and provides it to families and children in need.
You can help kids in need in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
The Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast. How did the Yankees become this mega valuable team? Where the money is flowing inside sports around the globe.
From the marketing perspective, where are the dollars spent?
From union heads to team owners. Nick and Michael Barr speak to the names that power this multi-billion-dollar industry.
Boston Red Sox CEO Sam Kennedy.
National Hockey League Commissioner Gary Bettman.
Bloomberg Business of Sports. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Are you interested in a challenge?
It's another Friday afternoon. Yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick. Experience Mexican culture and relax by the Caribbean Sea. Fly from London Gatwick to Cancun with British Airways from £275 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
At Argos, get them the toys they're dreaming of this Christmas. Save 20% when you spend £20 or more on toys with code TOYS20, including top brands like Peppa Pig and Lego. Enjoy same-day home delivery 7 days a week. With Argos, you're good to go. Offer ends the 12th of November, subject to availability. Exclusions apply. Delivery conditions apply. Order by 6 p.m. 90% UK coverage.
It's never nice missing out. But millions are doing just that by having a current account that doesn't pay them any interest on their hard-earned money. TSB is here to help. They offer interest to all their Plus account customers for no monthly fee. So if you're one of the millions of people who are missing out, talk to TSB. Terms and conditions apply.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
3 is a magic number. 300 schemes to help bugs and bees, supporting environmental needs. 8,000 grants for local sports, and performing arts get our support. 7 millionaires every week, the nation's on a winning streak. 30 million pounds to good causes every week. Who'd have thought it? These are magic numbers.
Your numbers make amazing happen. 25 years of the National Lottery.
Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Gosh, can we put the heating on?
Sorry, it's broken.
Can I play some tunes on my phone then?
Yeah, afraid not. Play CDs though.
This car belongs in a scrapyard.
I know, but I get nothing if I scrapped it.
Actually, you can get at least £2,000 off a new Ford for it.
Really?
With Ford's new for old scrappage scheme, you can get between £2,000 and £4,250 off a new Ford car if you scrap an eligible vehicle with us responsibly. Also, there's 0% APR representative on Ford options. Ford. Together, we go further. Search Ford Scrappage. Exclusions apply. Contracted and registered by 31st of December 2019 at participating dealers. Age and ownership criteria apply to scrappage vehicle. Subject to status. Free post Ford credit.
Good. Here's a swing and a drive deep to right field. Looking up. Goodbye, baseball.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off homers, follow TuneIn on social media to discover the latest and greatest in live sports.
With the 24th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft.
From live reminders that the biggest MLB games are on the air, to recommendations of the best new sports talk shows and podcasts.
He's going to be fine. He's going to be good right away in 3 years.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn. NFL fans, the action continues this weekend on TuneIn Premium.
Hand off the Gord, pushes forward, touchdown!
This Sunday, TuneIn has every NFL football game starting with the New York Giants at the New York Jets at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern and closing out Sunday night with the Vikings at the Dallas Cowboys at 8:20 p.m. Eastern.
Breaks inside the 25-20, inside the 15, the 10, the 5, touchdown!
At home or on the go, hear the home and away call of every NFL game this season on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, better than expected data out of China. We'll take a look at the economy as it does appear that for the moment, trade tensions appear to be softening somewhat with the U.S. Plus, we'll take a look at where the markets should go next year based on current positioning. We'll speak with Michael Purvis of Talbot and Capital Advisors. Right now, though, let's head over to our own Greg Jarrett for a Bloomberg News Flash. All right, king of the news.
Stocks halted their record run today as President Donald Trump contradicted reports that the United States and China would roll back existing tariffs. Christine Keller, Barclays head of economic research, tells Bloomberg any done trade deal might not have that much further impact on markets anyway.
Now, this is now seemingly a deal that is getting closer to what the Chinese want, and then the U.S. seems to be a bit on the more in need of a deal. I think markets have largely priced this in. If you look at equity markets, if you look at copper investment into China, there's a lot to be done on when you look at financial markets. If they open up, in terms of wealth management, etc., I think there could be more coming.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is down just 0.1%, down 2. The Dow's down 0.3%, down 75. The Nasdaq's up 0.1%, up 10. The 10-year is up 430 seconds. The yield 1.90%. West Texas Intermediate crude is down 0.3%, or excuse me, 0.75% at 56.73 a barrel. COMEX gold's up 0.1% at 1467.90 an ounce. The yen stands at 109.12. The euro $1.10.20. and the British pound, the dollar, 27.88. Well, Disney shares had their biggest gain in 7 months after they reached an agreement to put its new streaming service on Amazon, Samsung, and LG devices, ensuring access to tens of millions of viewers. Right now, Disney's up about 4%. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Better than expected export data, worse than expected import data. We're talking China and some of the numbers that we got overnight. Joining us here in our Interactive Broker studios is our own Damian Sassower, who covers everything emerging markets credits for us at Bloomberg Intelligence and knows everything about everything. It's really kind of shocking. Whatever I throw at you, you seem to have incredible wisdom on. I want to talk about China and the economy. Aside from the on-again, off-again trade talks, what is the latest state of play and where the economy is if you take away the trade pressure?
Yeah, no, I mean, well, look, let's just focus on what we saw overnight, right? We did see exports come in slightly better than expected. And for me, it's really quite notable because the base effect, I mean, if you go back to October of 2018, exports were up very significantly. So you thought it was going to be that much more difficult. I mean, people were expecting probably a bigger underperformance of that export number. So for them to just be down, 0.9% when the market was calling for 3.9% is pretty significant in my mind. But nevertheless, it comes on the heels of really weak trade data out of Malaysia. Just overnight, we saw the same thing in Taiwan, weaker than expected. So, I'm not going to accuse the data of being perhaps a little bit subject to slipperiness, but
you're going to accuse the data of being slippery, but you are.
But I am. Yeah, exactly. But no, I mean, look, if you just look at the data, I mean, it's really the Southeast Asian region and the EU that is picking up the export slack that's left from the U.S. because it's still pretty bad. I mean, trade between the U.S. and China definitely continues to decelerate.
Well, I think one cloud, or just my sense is that a cloud hanging over markets right now is China and its economy, independent of the noise. How far away are we from a real issue that the PBOC needs to address with firepower that they're not willing to unleash, at least not yet?
Well, I think the PBOC has definitely, kind of played their hand a bit. They see the weakness and they are unleashing the firepower. I mean, they did, cut the MLF this week. That means that the LPR, the loan prime rate's going to get cut probably again, and so, they definitely are trying to stimulate, but I think they're smart enough to realize that the stimulus just isn't working. You're not really seeing, the recession, the manufacturing recession in China is still raging. But in terms of the services sector and the consumer, it's really, really challenging for them to pick up the slack when, you've got all this trade overhang going on with the U.S.
Did you see the news about the banks, about how China is consolidating a bunch of the regional banks that have been struggling with the PBOC providing liquidity to some of them?
Sure.
How big a deal is that?
Of course, that's a big deal. I mean, it's a big risk. And look, I mean, if you just go back to the Baosheng Bank fiasco, I mean, it's these kind of mid-market banks that are relying on wholesale funding. Wholesale funding means they don't have deposits. They don't have, savers and that they can lean on in times of distress. It means that they need to go into the wholesale market and fund themselves synthetically. And that's a cause for concern with a lot of those banks.
If I'm not focusing on the Chinese economy per se, but just the broader global market, why is this such a big deal?
Well, yeah. I mean, in terms of contagion from China to the rest of the world through the banking sector as sort of the channel, the mechanism for that, it's still a very closed banking sector. I don't really see that slippage kind of resonating. But, we've talked about this many times about as we get into the end of the year, the demand for dollars increases globally. Why? Because many foreigners have had no choice but to issue debt in dollars because their local markets just aren't sophisticated enough to allow them to borrow in local currency. So as we get into the end of this year, I imagine the same thing's going to occur. The question this time is, have these foreign banks that basically are holding these dollar liabilities on their balance sheet, have they been able to offset that risk to date? And people who are smarter than I who do the analysis have said they roughly 75% of their dollar liabilities have already been hedged through the end of the year, but that still leaves a considerable amount that is subject to slippage as we head into the end of the year. And so from that perspective, yes, Lisa, I do think there is considerable risk as we get into the end of the year, and I could see that kind of materialize, kind of spilling over into the developed markets.
And how this relates to flows, I know you focus on credit, but there was a story about about how China was planning to invest $10 billion in the Saudi Aramco IPO. And I'm trying to understand the connection between China and the Middle East right now, and where all those tentacles go as this progresses. What did you make of that?
Well, I'll tell you, you made an interesting point to me the other day about the Brazilian oil auctions, right?
I thought that was so interesting.
Well, China was the only participant there that got any bit, right? Okay, so
Enough,
you know,
right?
unlike the lack of love that the Exxon Mobils and the Royal Dutch Shells are showing for, oil these days and oil projects, China's still got demand for that. Why? Because they don't have shale reserves like the U.S. does, and they don't have other kind of assets that they can lean on. I think the same thing goes for Aramco. It's this hatred for all things energy related from pretty much all Western markets. You don't find that in China. They need that oil. They need to consume it. They don't have much of it. So there's still that inherent demand there. But look, the verdict is still out as to whether or not, some of the kind of backup we're seeing in commodity markets are going to really kind of feed through into the real economy here in China.
Damian Sassower, I can talk to you all day. Honestly, this is and those Brazilian oil fields. That was such an interesting story. It was the largest auction ever of Brazilian oil fields, and not one major oil company bid on it. Yeah. It was largely thought of as a failed auction because of how high the price was. Damian Sassower, we'll have to have you back and talk about Latin America, because we have been seeing ongoing weakness in some of the assets there, particularly Chile and Argentina. Damian Sassower covers all EM fixed income for us here at Bloomberg Intelligence. And right now, we are looking at mixed markets, quiet markets, after reaching all-time highs yesterday. Yields basically sideways. Right now, let's head to our Nathan Hamlin studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager with World and National Headlines. Nathan.
Lisa, President Trump says he may release the transcript of his first phone call with Ukraine's president. He made that comment to reporters outside the White House this morning, saying he has no problem with the testimony that's come out so far about his July 25th phone call with President Zelensky, the call that has sparked the impeachment inquiry.
The call was perfect. Now thereafter, I have a second call, but nobody knew about. And I guess they want that call to be produced also.
The House Impeachment Committee's issued a subpoena today for acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney to testify about the July 25th phone call. Mulvaney did not comply. The president also says he's not agreed to roll back all tariffs on China as negotiations toward a phase one trade deal continue. He says if he does sign a deal, he'll do it in the U.S.
Well, we're looking at different, assuming we get it. I never like to talk about things until we have them. But it could be Iowa or farm country or someplace like that. It will be in our country, but it could be someplace like that.
President Trump is now headed to Georgia, where he will launch a Black Voices for Trump coalition. The chances of the House holding an impeachment vote by the end of the year depend on whether President Trump mounts a vigorous defense in hearings before the Judiciary Committee. That's what a House official who's been briefed on the process tells Bloomberg News. That phase of the investigation begins after Intelligence Committee public hearings wrap up. Those begin on Wednesday. Chicago's mayor has named former Los Angeles Police Chief Charlie Beck as interim police superintendent. The move comes a day after Eddie Johnson announced he's stepping down after more than 3 years as Chicago's top cop and more than 30 with the department. Global news, 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nathan Hager. This is Bloomberg.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us number 1 in client support, number 1 in firm leadership, number 1 in operational support, number 1 in compensation, number 1 in professional development support, and number 1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Join us in New York City on November 12th. It's another Friday afternoon, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick. Experience Mexican culture and relax by the Caribbean Sea. Fly from London Gatwick to Cancun with British Airways from £275 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Next time you look up at the stars, think about this. Inside you are the remains of a stellar explosion. You are made of stardust. And without the stars, there wouldn't be us. I'm Guy Raj, the wonders of the universe and the people who still look up every night. Next time on the TED Radio Hour from NPR. You can subscribe to the TED Radio Hour on TuneIn.
You're listening to TuneIn, where you can hear all the audio you love in one place. Live NFL games, the hottest music, breaking news, and podcasts. Push play and go about your day, only on TuneIn.
Along the goal line, Martin scores! He takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
Gonna move, hit a shot, he scores!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Get social with TuneIn. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for the latest and greatest audio on the app. Explore exclusive content. Learn about hot new podcasts and get alerted when the big game, well, it's about to begin. Add TuneIn to your feed and be in the know when it matters most.
Hi, this is Brian Weber, host of NFL First and Goal every Sunday, kicking off at 1 Eastern only on TuneIn Premium. Be sure to listen this Sunday for the ultimate football fan experience, featuring 7 hours of commercial-free coverage of every scoring play around the NFL.
The NBA is on TuneIn Premium.
He shoots it. It's good. It's a 1-point lead. They don't have a timeout.
Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss.
You're off to Wiggins, straight away on the triple try. Bingo. He knocks it down at the buzzer.
The defending champions, Toronto Raptors, are in LA to take on the red-hot LA Lakers. Tip-off is at 9:30 p.m. Eastern this Sunday. Search NBA on TuneIn to follow your favorite NBA team today.
At home or on the go, stay up to date on the latest news and political trends with Fox's full lineup of shows. Plus, when news breaks, Fox has you covered with live updates and expert analysis on the biggest developing stories. Listen to Fox News Talk anytime on TuneIn.
Start hearing more of what you want. Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations, live commercial-free news, and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
News 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks fluctuate after the president indicated the United States has not yet agreed to a tariff rollback with China, dimming hopes there'll be a preliminary trade deal sometime next month. We look at the numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is little changed now. Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 0.2%, down 59. The Nasdaq is up 0.25%, up 20. The 10-year is up 2/30 seconds with a yield of 1.91%. West Texas Intermediate crude is now little changed, slightly up at 57.18 a barrel. COMEX gold is little changed at 1465.50 an ounce. The dollar yen 109.15. The euro $1.10.21. The British pound $1.27.90. U.S. consumer sentiment improved for a third straight month in November. Americans grew more upbeat about their financial situation and the economic outlook. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Bloomberg Markets brought to you by the Jewish Communal Fund. JCF's donor advised fund is a smart choice to manage your philanthropy. Open a JCF fund now to lock in a 2019 tax deduction. Visit jcfny.org. Right now, we are ending on a quiet note, a week that otherwise saw record highs, and it saw bond yields reverse course and have the biggest surge since late summer. Joining us now, Michael Purvis, Talbach and Capital Advisors. Michael, is it too early to get a call on next year?
You know, I think as I'm writing up my 2020 framework, I go across the asset classes, come up with predictions. It's always a difficult process. This is one of the most difficult this year, contending with developed market political risk in spades right now with 2020 election. Is it President Warren? Is it President Trump? Is it President somebody else? And there's really no way to get edge on that decision. So you have to kind of plan through different scenarios as you think about them.
How crucial is that? How much does it matter?
Well, I think there's a lot of, you see a lot of media headlines that, if it's Warren, the market's down 30%. If it's Trump, it's up 20%. I actually would argue that the range of outcomes is going to be a lot less than what those narratives suggest. If it is a President Warren, we don't know how much to the center she might tack. I would, suggest that if she's going to have a real chance of getting elected, she's going to have to tack somewhat to the center. But putting that aside, the only confident prediction I can make about politics next year is that the Republicans are probably going to control the Senate, and the transformational legislation is just going to be stonewalled. So I think that there might be a lot of executive orders. There might be a different tone, certainly throughout the regulatory environment, and CEOs, are not going to like a lot of where she's directionally going. Having said that, on the other hand, if it's President Trump, you just don't know what kind of legacy he's going to be solving for. If it's more, I call it the Trump trade uncertainty principle, that's going to keep a lid on CapEx growth as well, right? We've already seen that just this year, and now maybe he will tack to a much more okay, let's get all this trade stuff wrapped up policy here, but we just don't know what he's going to do, right? And today's headlines are underscore that yet again.
I guess, it's interesting to me to hear that your focus goes immediately to the election, because this year probably it would have been trade. And I'm wondering how much that'll factor in next year, whether people are basically expecting it to be iced for the time being.
Well, I think there's been this narrative, a very understandable thinking that, Trump has kind of collared the market a little bit, right? If the VIX goes to 12, he can amp up the trade pressures, and then if the VIX goes to 20, he'll back off, right? He wants to keep the market in a good condition. Going as 2020 comes into sharper focus, that narrative would also suggest that, hey, he's going to be like, okay, let's push to get a deal done. But again, with Trump, you just don't know. And the other thing you don't know is what the Chinese response mechanism is going to be, right? So we've just assumed that if Trump wants to suddenly make a deal, the Chinese will be there to do that. And what we just don't know. Your colleague Vince Signorella has been really great on this point about talking about, it's just not a given where what the Chinese, where the Chinese might come to in cutting a deal here. So there's a lot of unknowns that no one really can get any edge on there. I think it seems like it would be logical for him, just from a political strategy point of view, to kind of get the CEOs much more confident into November next year. But let's see how that unfolds. And the other thing I would also point out, Lisa, is that Trump's approval ratings, since he's ramped up the trade story in the second quarter of 2018, have been incredibly stable. They don't seem to go up above the range. They don't seem to go below the range. It's sort of a 200 to 300 basis point range that they've been trading at. It seems to be very insensitive to whatever the trade headlines are, right? So I think it would be very interesting to see that if they do break a range for whatever reason, right, whether it's impeachment or who knows what, whether the Chinese will then, kind of really start playing offense on trade, right? Because they don't have midterm, they don't have elections next year, and we certainly do, right?
Yeah.
And so that would potentially put Trump in a weaker position where he's got to maybe give up more concessions. It's something he's going to want to do given his what he's been arguing for. So I think it's politics it's a very confusing and complex world, and we don't really have much history with which to understand market sentiment and economic trajectories through this kind of situation.
Yeah.
Having said that, I think there's one thing that I've been really fascinated with, which is that can the markets and the economy, for the matter, just simply adjust to a condition where trade is just going to be constantly negotiated for the next 12 months and maybe the next few years, whether it's President Warren, President Biden, President Trump. And it just has to get, sort of a little bit a la Brexit. Everyone just sort of adjusts to that. And there's ongoing trade tensions. And maybe the economy and the earnings and so forth really just kind of fight through it. And we never really get any resolution. And whether we can adjust to a risk-on environment with that just persistence of trade dialogue and negotiations never get done.
Just real quick here, I'm wondering what one high conviction trade is, given all of the uncertainty and all the lack of conviction around politics and trade and all the rest.
Right now, I think the thing I'm most interested in is just simply interest rates moving higher. You don't need an incremental set of good news, economic news, or risk sentiment for the term premiums to adjust to a higher level, and that could easily add, I think, 25 basis points higher in the 10-year. So, in other words, you can buy, you can short the TLT ETF or buy puts on that ETF as a rebalancing normalization trade.
And we have seen some fairly large withdrawals from the fund. Nearly, I believe, nearly $1 billion withdrawn over the past 5 trading days. Just giving a sense that people are moving away from longer term treasuries. Michael Purvis, thank you so much. Michael Purvis, Talbach and Capital Advisors, joining us on the phone to cap off a week of record highs. Also, some pretty massive moves in treasury yields, 50 basis points over the past 3 months, as John Farrow pointed out. That is how much 10-year treasury yields have increased. Interestingly, has not been weighing on stock valuations as people view 2.5% as the threshold. We're still sub 2% right now, about range bound as people assess some conflicted headlines with President Trump coming out earlier today and saying that so far the idea of rolling back tariffs has not been agreed to. That is one of the conditions that China would like to see met in order to move forward with some sort of trade truce, a phase 1 deal to at least mollify markets that have been nervous about some of the tensions. Yields now a little lower actually on the day. Coming up, Bloomberg Politics. Bloomberg Balance of Power. They'll be discussing all things 2020 elections from the Democrat side as well as Republican. This is Bloomberg Markets.
In addition to Bloomberg Radio, you can catch the latest news and biggest newsmakers on Bloomberg Television. Look for us on DirecTV Channel 353 or check your local listings.
It's another Friday afternoon, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and relax with 365 beautiful beaches.
So yes, sir, what would you like to have?
Fly from London Gatwick to Antigua with British Airways from £223 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
You're stuck indoors, waiting for a delivery.
But you should be at the match with your mates. Get in!
You want to be home when the kids get back from school.
Hey, guys.
But you've got to work late. Again. With Ring Video Doorbell, you can do both. Featuring HD video and two-way talk, you can see, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are, all on your phone. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
Cutting for the net, scores! On the goal line, Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
College football is live on TuneIn. Listen for free to games from more than 140 schools all season long.
To the 10, all the way to the checkerboard.
This Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, number 1 LSU is taking on number 2 Alabama with a battle between LSU's quarterback Joe Burrow and Alabama's QB Tua Tagovailoa. Both are potential number 1 picks in the NFL Draft. Listen to every call and every game of your school all season long for free on TuneIn. Just search college to listen today.
Today at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York to our TV and radio audiences worldwide. I'm David Weston. Welcome to Balance of Power, where the world of politics meets the world of business. On the brief today, Eric Wasson in Washington on the whistleblower's letter to President Trump, and for that matter, a second conversation with President Zelensky of Ukraine. So, Eric, welcome. Let's start with what the President told us about just today. This second conversation actually happened first, as I understand it, back in April.
That's right. There was an initial conversation between President Zelensky after he was elected and President Trump, and that has been mentioned in several of the witness testimony transcripts. And Trump is saying he'd be willing to release that. Now, we don't know if he's cleared that with Zelensky. Zelensky, in fact, was quite surprised when the initial transcript came out and his side was printed. It caused him some diplomatic problems with the EU. Trump also on the White House South Lawn was saying that pardon me, a bit of a cough here. He's against the idea of having public hearings. This is really in contradiction to the GOP messaging, which for weeks has called for public hearings in the wake of Adam Schiff's private testimony taking in the deep bunker in the Capitol.
Yeah, Eric, I found that fascinating, actually, because we'd heard from the Republican after Republican, this is so unfair because it's not in public. Now it's not clear that President Trump really wants it in public after all.
I know. The Republican messaging has been all over the map on this. Lately, they've been congealing around the idea that Mick Mulvaney, Sondland, and the other lower people in the State Department came up with this scheme at Ukraine on their own. We've heard that a lot from Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan, the House Freedom Caucus members who are Trump's chief defense members here and lawmakers on the Hill. They're basically saying they presumed there was a quid pro quo. They presumed there was a tie between the aid and this investigation into the Bidens, and that Trump had nothing to do with that. We'll see if that flies in the public hearing is set for next week.
Well, it's interesting you point that out, Eric, because I noticed in the Bill Taylor transcript of his behind the closed doors testimony, he said he didn't know that the president really was responsible for this. He knows that Rudy Giuliani was, but he didn't know whether the president was directly implicated. Could that be part of a defense by the White House that if something bad happened, it wasn't the president himself?
Yeah, it seems to be they're trying to look for some plausible deniability there. The Democrats keep coming back to that transcript where Trump says, do us a favor, though. And they say that it's implausible for the public to believe that these directions weren't coming from the very top.
Okay, thank you very much to Eric Wasson reporting from Washington. Capitol Hill, actually, was where he's reporting from. And now let's turn to Brexit editor Edward Evans. He's over in London. So, Edward, at least as we read it over here, it sounds like Prime Minister Johnson is having a little tough time getting his campaign going over there. A few glitches along the way.
You could say that, and that would be putting it mildly. I think this has been a week for both parties that both parties would rather forget. The Tory campaign's been hit by resignations, serving minister to resign during a general election in more than 100 years, and gaffes. Jacob Rees-Mogg saying that the 72 people who died in a tower block fire in 2017 hadn't exercised what he called common sense. Equally, on the Labour side, they've been hit by resignations too. Tom Watson, deputy leader, resigning, and allegations of anti-Semitism ingrained in the Labour Party. So really a week to forget, frankly, for both major political parties here.
One of the things that struck me is, as I understand, some senior members of government got stuck on a train platform. They couldn't get back to London, which you'd say, well, it's just inconvenient. But it does raise the question of, should the trains be privatized the way Maggie Thatcher did it? Or do they want to go back into the public sphere the way, as I understand, Jeremy Corbyn thinks they should do it?
Well, if I may correct you there, Maggie never privatised the railways. It was the one privatisation that even she shied away from. It was her successor, John Major, who did that.
Well done. I got it wrong. Time. Good for you. Thank you.
But it is an experience that many British commuters will be all too familiar with. And as an image of a campaign, a vignette that sort of sums up how the campaign is going to find half the British cabinet on the platform at Birmingham International on a dark night. It just shows you that in one place really sums up. This is a campaign that's not running on the tracks at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. A bit snake bit over there. So thank you very much. And thanks for that clarification. I always thought it was Maggie Thatcher. Thank you. That's Edward Everett. He is our Brexit editor reporting from London. And now let's bring in Damien Sassower of Bloomberg Intelligence on the latest trade headlines. And Damien, it was fascinating. The markets were doing pretty well. And then President Trump went out in the White House and said, you know what? I'm not so enthusiastic about this rollback of tariffs.
Well, everybody was kind of suspecting that the U.S. was eerily quiet throughout it all. But I mean, just looking back overnight and looking at some of the trade data, I mean, what's most impressive to me about this export data, and it came in stronger than expected, as I'm sure you're aware, was the negative base effect. I mean, if you just look back to October of 2018, I mean, exports were up 14.8%. So it was that much harder for them to beat expectations this time around. And yet they did it, only falling 9.9% relative to down 3.9% year over year. But, that has a large part to do with the EU and the Southeast Asian region really picking up the slack for, U.S. exports declining. And really what it tells me is, look, if you just look at the PBOC, they set the fix below 7 for the very first time in as long as I can remember since we broke through the psychological 7 handle. And if you just look at yesterday's MSCI just announced they're going to be adding a whole bunch of A shares into the EM index. It's going to take, A shares weight up to 4.1%. So you should see some positive momentum on the back of capital flows coming into the country off that.
It leads to the question, actually, is China trading as an emerging market at this point?
No, not at all. No, I mean, it's funny, the definition of an emerging market, you and I have gone back about this before, but China's not an emerging market. Nevertheless, I guess people try to put it in that bucket. I think for me, it's really going to be about seeing manufacturing bottom in China in order for us to see, a real kind of green shoots sort of occurring there. And, if you just look at the PBOC, I think they're kind of extending themselves a bit here. They're cutting rates there. They've lowered the LPR. They've lowered the MLF. I mean, so, they still realize there are real problems at home and they need to stimulate their economies. So,
fascinating.
Yeah.
Damien Sassower, always great to have you with us, Damien. Thank you very much. And now let's check in on those markets and see how they're reacting to the top stories from today. Joining us, Abigail Doolittle. So as I sort of got ahead of myself here, but looking at the chart, I think it's kind of right. The markets really took a hit when President Trump said not so fast on rolling back the tariffs.
They did take a small leg lower, but in the perspective of small moves, so it actually, right now, we're barely moving on any of the major averages. But yes, we did take a little leg lower because it was President Trump saying that the rollbacks that folks had been expecting, the U.S. has not, in fact, agreed to. So it's a continuation of the trade narrative where one day or 1 week it's bullish for the markets, and then the next week it's neutral or could even turn bearish. Until we have a deal, there is no deal. I think that that's something that we can safely assume. But investors, based on the fact that stocks are basically flat, the S&P 500 on pace for its 5th up week in a row, they're probably a little bit more constructive around the possibility of a deal than not.
So, as you say, we could go up and down and all around about this trade thing. We've been doing it forever, right?
Yes.
But give me something else that could drive the markets, because we're sort of through the earnings season for the most part now. Can't look forward to those anytime soon. Well, if the markets have to have something else to trade off of, what's it going to be?
Well, I think it's still related to earnings in a way, because this earnings season was better than feared. A small earnings recession, the third down quarter for earnings in a row. But the expectation is going ahead, we're probably going to come out of that earnings recession. So for that reason, investors may be willing to put some money in the game, put some skin in the game, and buy stocks. plus the Fed. There's just this sense that the Fed has got investors back, or the investing community's back, and cruise control.
So let me go off script and maybe be unfair.
Yeah.
How correlated is the market right now? Is it reacting to macro factors such as the Fed, for example, or trade, or is it more differentiated?
That's a great question, David. And when you come at it, like in an earnings season, it tends to be a little bit less correlated because you're reacting to the individual stock story. So, for instance, today stocks are basically flat. Disney, we have popping higher because they put up a solid quarter, and the guidance is
on those movies. Those movies came through for Disney.
Yes, Avengers, Star Wars, and all these movies, and of course Disney Plus next week. But as we go out of earnings season, it'll probably become a little bit more correlated again, as it's simply more of the macro factor backdrop.
Fascinating. Thank you so much, Abigail Doodle. She always keeps us up to date on the markets. And right now we're going to turn to Mark Crumpton. He's here with Bloomberg First Word News.
David, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo warns that NATO risks becoming irrelevant. That's adding fuel to the criticism of the transatlantic alliance. Secretary Pompeo says NATO would lose significance if its 29 members don't contribute enough to the common defense. He made the comments on a visit to Berlin to mark the 30th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. Iran's air defense force has shot down what it's calling an unknown drone over the Persian Gulf. That's according to its state-run news agency. The report did not say whether the drone was a military or commercially available device. Local authorities claim the drone belonged to a foreign country and that parts of it had been recovered. They say it violated Iran's airspace. The United Nations highest court says it has jurisdiction in a case brought by Ukraine against Russia. The International Court of Justice will examine allegations that Russia breached treaties on terrorist financing and racial discrimination. The Kremlin's accused of arming rebels in eastern Ukraine and reining in the rights of ethnic minorities following its annexation of Crimea. The case could take years to settle. In Alabama, Jeff Sessions will run for the Senate seat he gave up to become President Trump's first attorney general. In a video, Sessions says he remains a strong Trump supporter despite, quote, our ups and downs. He resigned from the cabinet last year after months of insults from the president. Most had to do with Sessions' recusal from the investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thanks so much, Mark. Coming up, the law of unintended consequences. Could Elizabeth Warren's wealth tax drive billionaires exactly where she doesn't want them to go? This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
To understand the latest developments in...
It's another Friday afternoon, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick. Reach the top of Mount Teede or relax on a sandy beach. Fly from London Gatwick to Tenerife with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £349 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Hello? This is Dustin. I found something. Is anybody there?
We hear you, Dustin. With Sky Q, you can easily catch up on epic Netflix shows like Stranger Things and then watch award-winning Sky originals like Chernobyl. Get Sky and Netflix all in one place on Sky Q for one surprisingly low price, just £25 a month. Visit sky.com and join today. Offer ends November 14th. 18-month minimum terms. Prices may change during contract. Requires Sky Q box connected to broadband. Set up from £20. Further terms apply.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The Dow lower, S&P, NASDAQ, they're both pushing higher. Equities drifting after President Trump said the U.S. has not agreed to a tariff rollback with China, dimming hopes for a preliminary trade deal next month. S&P 500 index little changed after notching a record yesterday on trade optimism. It is on track, though, for a fifth weekly gain, sparked by optimism. Global growth has bottomed, and a partial trade pact is within reach. So here's where we stand right now. We've got the S&P 500 index up a point at 3,086, a gain of less than 0.1%. Again, little change there. The Dow down 41, lower by 0.2%. Nasdaq higher by 20. That is a gain of 0.2%. 10-year up 1/32 with the yield right now 1.91%. Gold down 0.3%, 14.63 the ounce. Recapping stocks lower. S&P down 0.1%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. Elizabeth Warren's proposed wealth tax is making waves from Wall Street to Silicon Valley. The Democratic presidential candidate is doubling now her initial tax rate as a way to fund Medicare for all without raising taxes on the middle class, something she's promised not to do. But this could have some unintended consequences, benefiting, of all things, maybe, believe it or not, private equity, which Elizabeth Warren doesn't tend to like. Bloomberg's Brandon Kachkodan is now here with his story. So explain exactly why this might drive people toward private equity.
Yeah, so the idea was to look at, just assume this 6% is going to be a barrier. If you're not making more than 6%, your wealth is going to go down. So let's look at some capital market assumptions that are out there. We looked at GMO, we looked at BlackRock, JP Morgan, all the ones that are publicly available. And if you look at those, take it at 7 years, 10 years, there's sort of one game in town, and that's private equity if you want to surpass a 6% tax.
But won't they essentially evaluate whatever the value is of the private equity and impose the wealth tax on that valuation?
Sure, but the goal is beating that 6%, right? So, I mean, that's the option if you go by these capital market assumptions.
But under that analysis, the government would still get the money. She'd still have the money to pay for Medicare for all. So it doesn't come out of that. It's not really tax avoidance.
It's not tax avoidance. It's the idea of just where do you have to put your money? Where do you have to reallocate some of your money to beat that 6%?
It's sort of a different form of a search for yield.
Exactly.
You need higher yield if they're going to take some of your wealth away.
Exactly, and that's why we sort of draw a comparison to looking at what endowments and pensions have been doing in a low interest rate environment in consideration of their own hurdle rates.
Brandon, does it suggest other sort of alternative investments? It's not just private equity, but things like real estate and other things that are somewhat riskier but particularly higher reward.
Certainly, and it depends on which capital market assumptions you're looking at. Some of them show other options, hedge funds, mezzanine. Real estate debt, things like that are also there. But private equity is the one that seems to be across the board that shows up above that 6% threshold.
Very interesting piece. Okay, thanks so much to Bloomberg's Brandon Kachkoda. Now, for more on policies and politics, for that matter, we welcome now our panel of E. O'Brien Murray, founder of Red Barn Strategies and president of Accountable New York, and Basil Smikle. He's former executive director of the New York State Democratic Party. So welcome to both of you.
Thank you. Well, so Basil, adjusted rate of return, though, is where that all comes back down to it, and they're going to find ways to move the money. They'll move it to other places where they don't get calculated on a regular basis, and maybe you put the money on day one, you don't know the value of your real estate until day 20, until year 20 at times. When you put your money in certain things, if there's no expiration date on these funds, that money can sit there and they won't get the money.
So Basil, let's turn to you on this. In this sense, there's a lot of uncertainty about all this stuff, right? But the one thing that seems to be clear is Elizabeth Warren is feeling some heat to make her numbers add up. That is, because she keeps saying, I'm not going to tax the middle class, I'm going to have Medicare for all. A lot of people are saying those numbers don't add up. Now she's doubled her rate, and she's saying we're going to find a way to tax all of you guys.
Yes. Now, being the political person in the room, I actually understood everything that was said earlier, and I would concur that if you have the ability to move your money, that is what's going to happen. So the challenge that Elizabeth Warren has faced is that, if you remember on the debate stage when she was asked how you would pay for your plan, she was not able to do that. So I don't want to say the rush, but for the sake of expediency, she does come out with this plan that I don't know is fully thought through. Having said all of that, I actually don't think that's where most of the concern over her plan is going to be in terms of taxing the wealthy. It's not around that. It's around the folks that have private health care. Are they going to lose it? That is really where the conflict is. Right. But at the same time, do we want the government to take in more money and spend it? Who's better to spend our money? Ourselves
or the government. And that's what this really comes down to. She's finding a way to spend more money for the government to control more of what we spend every day.
So you got two issues there, and I agree both of them with some voters who resonate. On the one hand, I don't want to give them my private insurance problem. On the other hand, do we really want the government controlling everybody's health care? At the same time, most people agree it is wrong that the number of people who are uninsured are insured. They don't get coverage. And thus far, the Republicans have not come up with a plan for universal coverage, however you do it.
There are many ways to try to do it, and you work on a state basis, but not the federal basis. I think that's what we're looking at now. You look, the states come up, the states determine what they can do. Why should the federal government come tell every state what they should do and how they should do it? That's part of it. The other thing is, what about all the men and women that work at these insurance companies? She wants to just throw them out in the street. What happens to all those companies and all those jobs? That's a part of this economy that isn't even being answered about when you put the wealth tax on and you move it over somewhere else.
We're here with E. O'Brien Murray and Basil Smikle. Well, okay, fine, E. O'Brien, but part of the answer to why the federal government is the states haven't done it. We've been doing this for a long time, and we have millions and millions of Americans who do not have health coverage.
But if the states aren't doing it, maybe that's the reason on a local level they don't want the government to control it. They want to try to find out what they can do, and they want to get people out of the emergency rooms.
Let me go to that point, because on issue after issue, whether it's healthcare or education, which is what I do in study and research, the states have always asserted their rights against the federal government to promote their own policies. That is true. But when has the federal government stepped in? When there's been a national interest, whether it's been in the New Deal, whether it was through the Great Society, in terms of ending poverty, the federal government has stepped in.
You're the guy with the PhD, but believe that part.
And when it comes to education, the GI Bill.
And the GI Bill.
Enormous infrastructure in education was built up on the GI Bill.
So there is an appetite for this.
There is
there's an appetite for this, and I think there is a growing consensus that capitalism as we know it is not working for everybody. And if we can chip away at healthcare.
But why is there such a backlash on Warren's plan? Part of it is because they don't want it. That's what you're saying. They're going too far.
Well, no, but
Obamacare.
It's not exactly that, though.
How are they going to pay for it? It's ideal for everyone to have a car in their garage. But if you can't afford a house, why do you don't have a garage? You don't have a car.
But part of the point is there are objections to Elizabeth Warren's plan. No question about it. You two have just illustrated two of them. But that doesn't mean there isn't a problem to be addressed. And are the Republicans proposing any way to address it, other than just keep kicking the can down the road?
I think it's much more about the state rights. It really is at this point. The federal government has grown too much. We saw this with Obamacare. We saw what happened there. We had a tax on people who couldn't afford insurance to help say, let's tax them, even though you can't afford insurance. And that's a solution. That was the Obamacare problem that got thrown out.
I'll just say very quickly, there is no alternative that the Republicans are putting forward. They hate Obamacare, but the Affordable Care Act has proven to be a very resilient piece of legislation. And that's what we're hearing from both Democrats and Republicans right now. Healthcare is on the top of their list.
That was all passed with Democratic votes at that point, too. It was not a bipartisan effort. And that's part of the challenge here.
But is it unfair, Obi, to say that, in fact, when the Republicans went after the Affordable Care Act, they paid the price in the midterm elections?
There was an issue, no question about it. They did it because they found one tweak in there that's very important, the pre-existing conditions. But it took the Democrats that many years to do it. That should have been taken care of. The Republicans had the wrong message at that point. But that does not mean the whole health care plan has to be changed and brought back to where Elizabeth Warren wants it.
Obi, let me ask a pointed question. What happened to the suburbs on Tuesday? For Republicans in Philadelphia,
right here we
in Richmond. What happened to the suburbs for Republicans?
Hempstead, Long Island, we won that. Yorktown, up in Westchester, we won that. You're 100% right. In certain parts of this country, no question about it. But you look at it, you can't. All politics is local. We can't beat somebody with nobody. But Matt Slater up there in Yorktown is going great, and Don Clavin out in Hempstead. You saw those. You saw we beat two Democrat incumbents right here in New York.
All I would say. Momentum. That's it.
Okay.
That is the word of the day.
Sure.
We had a good day, and interestingly enough, if you just look very specifically at the Democratic primary, those results actually helped Joe Biden. There are a lot of his voters, those older voters, suburban voters, that he has tied to his electability argument.
Yeah, but momentum is obviously very important in politics. Do you have the standard bearer to take you there? Is it Elizabeth Warren? Is it Joe Biden?
That's the unknown question right now, because I always tell voters, anger only gets you to 49%. Being angry at Donald Trump is one thing. We have to actually embrace our candidate to get to 51%. But we haven't gotten that candidate yet.
Maybe it takes only to 49%. I think President Trump has gotten a long way on anger.
It's helped him a lot. It's motivation and excitement. That's what it brings. That's what it brings. It brings momentum. It brings motivation. People have a reason to go to the polls. That's what a lot of it is. I think what we're talking about here too is when people are demotivated to go to the polls, when they don't have an excitement about somebody, when they're voting against somebody, they're less likely to go vote. That's one of the challenges there.
People right now feel like they're pretty excited. That's okay. Particularly right here. This is very exciting. Many thanks to our panel of E.O. Brian Murray and Basil Smyko. Great conversation. Still ahead, President Trump versus vaping, the president's latest proposal to address a national epidemic. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Why is It's another Friday afternoon, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and enjoy stunning white sand and crystal blue sea. Fly from London Gatwick to the Maldives with British Airways from £300 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
With the new Halifax Family Boost mortgage, children can get help to buy their first home, and mum and dad earn interest on their savings. Everyone's a winner. The new Halifax Family Boost mortgage. Halifax makes it happen.
Your home and savings could be at risk if mortgage repayments are not maintained. Only available in England and Wales. One applicant must hold a Halifax Reward or Ultimate Reward current account. Conditions and exclusions apply.
College football is live on TuneIn. Listen for free to games from more than 140 schools all season long.
All the way to the checkerboard.
This Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, number 1 LSU is taking on number 2 Alabama with a battle between LSU's quarterback Joe Burrow and Alabama's QB Tua Tagovailoa. Both are potential number 1 picks in the NFL Draft. Listen to every call and every game of your school all season long for free on TuneIn. Just search college to listen today.
Stuck in traffic during the big game? With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to your favorite NFL team on the go. No TV required, even during rush hour.